Welcome back to Off the Rip. Been a little bit of a hiatus for us since we had the holiday season. Wanted to make sure everyone had enough time to, enjoy their family, their friends, and of course things like presents and all that goodness. I hold Chet be leading up the podcast for you guys today. We've got a pretty healthy topic list for you guys talking about the new CDL format changes, and apparently we all have some questions about what the 10-point system will look like. I'm not just saying we as a community, but apparently we in the panel are not 100% sure what the actual details are. We'll also be talking about the challengers, the Path to Pro system, with the schedule updates that we've gotten more determination as far as what will be happening for the quote-unquote minor tournaments versus the major events that'll be happening. And we'll also talk about expectations as we go in to Minnesota. The panel today will include two wonderful gentlemen, both of which work for the Atlanta FaZe, so no bias whatsoever from these two guys. Starting things off, we've got Nick, who, again, you probably are familiar with from his time with COD Gamepedia and the behind-the-scenes work with UMG. Tell the fans and the people about you.
Yeah, so I've been in esports now it's 6 years. So I used to be 5, but got to add a year to that now. Yeah, worked with multiple brands like Gamepedia, Decerto, UMG, now FaZe. Happy to be here and happy to talk some COD with Shift and AO.
We love that. We love doing the old COD talk. And of course, if you've joined us before, whether you've listened in or watched live, you probably know EasyBack, one of our returning guests, joining us once again as the analyst from the Atlanta FaZe. Hi, guy.
Hi, what's up, guys?
Looking a little wet over
Back
there,
again.
dude.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
a
yeah, dude.
little steamy over here.
Fresh out the shower. Tell the people who might not know you who you are, though.
So I'm the analyst for Atlanta FaZe. I was the analyst last year for FaZe Clan for a little bit, the last couple tournaments. So I'm basically the stats guy. I keep a whole record book for the team. I work under RJ and Crowder. So yeah, that's pretty much my history. I don't have much. Working on 9 months now in the scene, so doing that role. So yeah, that's me.
Big time energy coming out of Easy Mac and the Atlanta guys. But like we mentioned, we were to start talking about the CDL format change. Now, we talked a couple of weeks ago when last on this show about how much travel was initially going to be kind of assumed based on the schedule that we saw from the CDL, where there was flights going from Paris back to LA all over the place for the first couple of weeks. And then recently, Activision Blizzard said that they were going to change the format, mostly because the teams that were invested in the Overwatch League were going to have a little bit too much of a trouble running home events for the Overwatch League and for the Call of Duty League. So it's going to be less weekends as we move to a tournament structure. That's what I want to talk about first, because it's less total weekends, but it will mean more matchups. So what are your guys' initial thoughts as far as that format change initially?
I like it. I think originally with the 24 homestands, it was a lot of travel. It was like almost too much, and you're putting too much pressure on 2 matches a weekend. So it's a lot of added pressure on the players because you can't really rebound that quickly too. Like you play, let's say you have 2 bad matches, then you got to sit on that for 2 weeks,
Right.
and you're putting a lot of pressure on just 2 matches per team. But now you got 14 tournaments total this year, I believe, because I think you have one per homestand and then the All Star and then the finals. I believe that's how the format's going to be like. So that's actually a lot more tournaments than we've had in the last couple of years, anyways. Even though they're not major tournaments, they're still 8-team tournaments. It's still a lot of Call of Duty for the fans and everything. So I like the change a lot. It's a lot less travel. You're a lot more meaningful matches instead of a lot of these matches before were not as meaningful. So now each tournament means a lot because you get a max 400 points because you get 50 per win. Teams are going to be at, I believe, 8 of the events. So that's a max
Right.
of 400. So each of these wins is actually a lot going towards the end of the year. So yeah.
Nick, what were your thoughts when you kind of heard the differences between the initial schedule versus this proposed one?
I absolutely love this new format. Personally, I think every single aspect of like the structure is an upgrade, even down to like from the team state, like from the like ownership standpoint of the teams. Because before, like, think about a team that's in both Overwatch and Call of Duty. They have to run 2 Overwatch events, potentially a third if like a special events there, or like a finals is there. Then you
Right.
have Call of Duty where you have to run 2 with the old format. So now you're only down to 1 for Call of Duty. You have your main, maybe 1 or 2 for some teams depending on the midseason and the championship weekend. As far as matches, you go per weekend to, I believe it's 13 per weekend matches.
Yeah, total
13
series as
Yeah.
far
total
as
with
what
the
would be
bracket
covered. Yeah, yeah.
versus like 5 to 6 for the prices that they were asking for tickets. I think that's way more reasonable. You were seeing tickets north of $400 for some VIP passes that you would see a couple matches a weekend that weren't even that great actually. Like some of the matches, I think that's the scheduling now is way better as well. Like Austin said, there's going to be, I think each team has 8 homestands they're going to be at. So you get the opportunity as well with a bracket to have more interesting games versus just like a international matchup that's in the United States on like a random time on a Sunday.
Yeah,
So
without like the rivalry impact of like
yeah,
what we were
like what
kind of
was it?
expecting.
I forgot the old schedule. It was I think the LA week. It was London versus I want to say Paris on like second match of the day on like to start the tournament. I'm like
Right.
or to start the weekend. I'm like I don't
Yeah.
Yeah,
know.
the scheduling is gonna
Save
be
that
so much
save
better with
those
the tournaments.
yeah, you should save those special matches for those home series in my opinion.
Yeah, totally agree. I was the same way, and I think we actually talked about that in one of the previous podcasts as well when the schedule was initially launched. Obviously, it's not really relevant now because the schedule has changed completely. My biggest worry about this system is kind of how it might become more of an off balance when it comes to the matchups because you figure that if the better teams are going to be playing more, they'll be playing up against each other more. You're going to get more of that rivalry, which is great. But for the teams that aren't playing as well early, they're not going to have as much of an opportunity to get as much exposure when it comes to playing on the LAN environment, whether that be against a formidable opponent or maybe not. The biggest thing is, from last year to this year, we had this system of you're going to play each team in your group twice, and then you'll play everybody in the other group once. We're not necessarily going to have any kind of a set schedule where you will play each team X amount of times because of this tournament format. Again, if you're unfamiliar with what the tournaments will look like, it's actually 2 different brackets that happen. You've got your group bracket, which is double elimination. Top 2 from that will then go to a final single elimination top 4 bracket. Do you guys maybe have a little bit of worry? I mean, especially being with the Atlanta team, I'm sure there's not nearly as much of a concern considering the team is doing so well. But do you guys have maybe a little bit of a worry as far as how that kind of makes a little bit of a weight difference when it comes down to the fact that some teams are going to get more practice on LAN early because of their natural good standing early on in the season?
I think it's gonna hurt. I think it's gonna hurt both good teams and bad teams actually, because one, you're putting a lot of pressure. So like even for like our team, for instance, like we can't go out in groups. Like it's not a good look. So even like the good teams are gonna have a lot of pressure. The bad teams are gonna have a lot of pressure to make it on. Even though they might seem as it's not as bad for them, it's still a lot of pressure because if you don't make it out of groups for consecutive tournaments, it's gonna be like kind of how like Envy had that extra pressure last year when they were going on that losing streak.
Right.
So you have that for one, and then it's also kind of like even though it's a negative for the bad for like bad teams that don't make it out of the groups because they're not playing as much, it's still negative for the good teams that are making it far because you can play max 5 matches, I believe, if you lose and then make it to the losers bracket to win the tournament.
Right.
So that's 5 matches of VOD that you're gonna have on these teams. So like a team like us, or a team like Dallas, a team like Chicago. There's a lot you can learn from that. So if they're playing 4 to 5 matches a tournament, that's 8. That's 6 to 8 hard points, 6 to 8 searches. It's DOMs that you can look over and learn from. So that's how I feel like it kind of like balances it out. So even if those bad teams go out early, they still got a lot to like learn from watching. So that's kind of the only issue I have is when you have like these home stands that don't have the power five, like like the top teams, those are a little bit imbalanced for me because
Sure.
those wins still count the same as like let's say like Chicago's homestand, which is absolutely loaded. So it's kind of like that's the only thing I'm concerned with.
That makes sense. Nick, what are your kind of takes as far as that balance goes from last year to this year?
Yeah, I think one thing that they tried to do with the format to remedy this issue that I might occur this year is they didn't like take seeding into account for the opening matches for the weekends. Like they kind of just predetermine those so that we aren't seeing like if let's say Huntsman or FaZe is on the top all year and then like Paris or LA is on the bottom all year, we won't see like LA versus Optic or not Optic, but you know what I mean, Huntsman.
Sure.
We won't see that type of matchup every first round on like every weekend. So that's like one way I think they tried to help it. But with how GSL format normally works, you normally get the best teams all the time because it's hard to cause upsets multiple times in a row. So some of these lower tier teams in a GSL format, I don't think are gonna fare well. Like you may see a first round upset and they're gonna get into that qualifying round, but as well, you have to play an even tougher team in that second round, drop down, and then if you lose again, you're out. So
It's tough,
Yeah.
and I think that's the weirdest thing. And they said that the initial matchups will be determined at a later point. So who knows if it'll
Mhm.
be by seeding or not? But you kind of feel like if it is by seeding, that's good. Like you mentioned, if you get the number one team versus the number eight team over and over and over again, it's going to be really tough for that squad to win a game, or let alone to kind of progress. This is kind of a very off tangential thing, but back in the day, I used to march drum corps, where the time slots as far as when groups would perform would be based on how highly ranked they were. So the
Mhm.
group that's the worst has to leave the rehearsal site earliest to get to the show because they perform first. So you're getting less practice. And it kind of feels like maybe that's kind of the same thing. If you're only getting the one seed or the top, let's say top three are always playing a bottom three seed, that just feels like, again, for the bottom three seed, it very well could be a little bit off kilter. But like kind of you mentioned, Easy Mac, if you're getting two top three teams playing up against each other in the initial matchup, then the pressure is on just to get out of groups. So I,
Yeah.
I think that the appeal for the audience is great, but I think there definitely are some considerations that both of you guys mentioned that I was also kind of thinking about when it came down to just the groups themselves. How are those going to be properly structured so it feels fair and balanced? And that conversation is difficult because fair and balanced for the top is not necessarily fair and balanced for the bottom teams when it comes to the CDL.
I
Yeah.
think it just also puts more pressure on every single one of these matches, even like especially for the bottom teams, like you can't go out early because it's valuable practice that
Oh,
you're missing
absolutely.
out on late in these tournaments. Like if you're 13 possible matches like in a tournament across like all the teams and you're only taking part in two of them, like that's just absolutely tragic. And
Yeah.
it's just like a dagger to the heart of your practice.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that all goes. And now this is where I think a couple of people were a little bit lost. It goes to a point system here. So instead of just having a win-loss next to your name, you earn 10 points per match win. And at least as far as I interpreted the post, initially I was thinking it was 10 points per win, and then there was a bonus depending on where you placed in the tournament. But as I kind of reread it, I thought that the system was you get 10 points per win, period. And if you win a tournament, you get an extra bonus 10 for winning. So you get 50 points for winning a tournament. And then you would get the breakdown from there, depending on how many matches you win. Is that kind of how you guys interpreted it as well?
So
Mhm.
looking at the post, it says each homestand weekend CDL points will be distributed in the following structure. So first gets 50, second gets 30, third, fourth get 20, fifth, sixth get 10, and then the bottom get 0. So the way I looked at that was like you get bonuses for winning. So you get like the plus 10 for winning, and then you get the bonuses for your placement. So it's kind of like in like BRs how you have placement points and then kill points. So that's kind of how I looked at it. I could be wrong, but
That's
I
how I looked at it initially as well. But what
Mhm.
yeah.
kind of flipped me up was when it goes back to say that you get a plus 10 bonus for winning the tournament. That would essentially give you the 50 points because you have to win 4 matches to win the tournament. So the plus 10 would make it 50. But it was worded a little bit
Yeah.
strangely.
So maybe that's
It is
already
it
in
is a
the
little weird.
total. It's just already in the total, I assume.
Yeah.
That's kind of what
I
yeah.
know I know only for launch weekend they're using like the if you win a match you get 10 points.
Right, right.
So I just don't know if that universally applies for the tournaments as well, like the
That would
finals.
make a big gap too if you did the wins plus 10 and then placement
Yeah.
plus like 50, because then that would be 50. That would be like 90 to 100 points you're gonna get on that weekend. So
Yeah, well, it
Mhm.
would be if you're
yeah,
yeah 90. It'd be a full out 90, or yeah, depending if the bonus was added to that 90 or 100, like you mentioned, to 0. I mean,
yeah,
that
it's a
makes
big spread.
things very 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 wildly different. Regardless of how the tournament point structure is broken down, what are your guys' general thoughts about going to a point system and getting away from win losses? It definitely helps in a certain way where it comes to tiebreaker in certain ways because you just get points based on your total winnings. So, what are your guys' general reception to going to this point system?
I
I
love
think
it.
it's like yeah.
You can go.
Go
You can
ahead.
go.
Oh no, go ahead.
So like I've always been a big fan of Dota. I don't really follow like the game as much, but I love their structure they have. Valve set. So I love how like you go throughout the year and you're getting points. It's kind of like the F1 system. Like I love it how like it makes everything more meaningful instead of like so if you look back to like Black Ops 4 last year, like was Fort Worth meaningful towards shot COD champs? Like not
Right.
really.
No. Yeah.
Was Las Vegas? Like no. So but even like this what's the first homestand? London. So London's homestand is going to be like it's going to change the landscape of the playoffs right off the bat. So I think at the end of the year, like teams going to look back at let's say like two of their homestands that they did bad on, and it's going to be meaningful whether or not they actually made playoffs or not. And I think that helps the story of the season, and it helps like create storylines throughout the year, so it's not all broken up instead of like how we had it like in the years past. And I think it really gives players and teams zero excuses if you don't make playoffs, because you had a whole year to get better, and every tournament mattered. So it's not just one qualifier and out. So it's on you if you don't make it. So I think it's a huge change. It's really good for the scene.
Yeah. Nick, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think overall, uh, here, Austin, real quick, can you run back that last part you said? It completely just blanked my mind.
So
Apologies.
like
It's been a long one.
it like ties the whole season together. It gives you storylines
Yeah,
to
yeah,
talk about, and like even like the tournaments in like London and Atlanta, the first two, it's meaningful towards playoffs in whether it's gonna be in July or August. I don't know, the date isn't announced yet. So all these tournaments aren't broken up like they were in past years that don't really
yeah.
mean anything towards the end of the year.
Yeah, you said one word and it instantly clicked back in my head, so thank you. But I think that you have to keep in mind that originally planned this was just going to be like a default like sports leagues format. So for what they were working for with a last second change to this tournament format this year, and be like still having to keep the Minnesota like launch weekend the same. I think it's the only format that will work with both, to where you can have a weekend of league matches like we're going to have coming up shortly, and then down the line do these tournaments as well. And then, like Austin said, it makes every single one of them important versus like a Fort Worth or a Dallas to like open up our season. That's like, okay, cool. Like COD Esports is back, but like the event in like 6 months time is going to mean Jack. So
That's a good
I think
point.
they can build off this really easy too, because there's a
100%.
lot of differences you can make. So one thing I do like about Dota is like every tournament feels different because they all run differently and they're all different production wise. So in the future, if you give teams more of a let them do their own thing, like with the format, as long as the point structure is the same, you could see like a lot cooler like formats and productions, and like it would force teams to like one up each other and like try to get better and better, and that's only good for it's only going to be great for the scene. So that's it, like having this tournament structure is going to give more growth in long term for the league instead of league matches.
Mhm.
So I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, I
Yeah, when you put
was.
a
Go
go
ahead,
ahead.
Nick.
When you put a homestand, like if you give a homestand to every single city, it's just like what Austin said. Like personally, I'm really stoked for Atlanta's homestand because we have a lot of cool stuff planned. So like we want to make sure that our homestand like layout and
Blows
stuff is
everything
like,
out.
yeah, it's like we want to be better than every other team in the league, and like I'm sure that every other team in the league wants to be better than us and stuff like that. So it's another level of competition in a sense when you add that level of like each team has a home weekend.
Yeah, the identity portion I think is super important, and I got to experience the Atlanta homestand for the Overwatch League last year, and that kind of rang with me a lot. I mean, the matchups were not exactly again. That's one of the things we talked about before, is the matchups that they had planned were not necessarily
Mhm.
like, oh my god, these are incredible matches that I have to watch, but still, like the identity and the brand of being able to put a team with a city, I think is super, super important. And when you turn it into a tournament format, I think it does bring an extra sense of energy, because we got that, from years past when it came to the open events as a whole. But the thing that I think I'm most excited about when it comes to this format is the simple fact that we're seeing that the CDL League Ops team is, even though there are elements that are influenced by what has happened previously with the Overwatch League, they're not just immediately copy and pasting. I'm so glad that we don't just have regular season and then just stage playoffs, because like the stage playoffs were cool and all, but it really did feel like, all right, we need to do something at the quarter way, halfway, 3/4 way mark just to get people to rewatch again, because
Yeah.
regular season matches for 6 months and then a finals, you can't necessarily buy into an audience to say, well, why as an audience member do I want to watch this matchup? But a tournament format, I think, really does bring that to life. And I think you hit it really nicely, Austin, was the simple fact that the point structure does mean that every match becomes more worthwhile to watch. Kind of like how the incentive prize pool did for last year, money per
Yeah,
win. But that was more of like, it felt like an incentive for the players, and the audience
not
was
much
kind
the
of,
Yeah,
fans.
this is
yeah,
an
not much for the
incentive for
fans.
everyone around.
Yeah, but this format feels like there is a reason to root for a team or root against a team if like you're looking at playoff implications. And I'm really, really excited about that. I think the League Ops team did a really good job putting together kind of the best of both worlds, where we have a regular season structure that really does feel fluid from start to finish without having these little peaks and valleys. But at the same point, making it worthwhile for teams when it comes to not having to travel as much, but still playing even more, which is really what Call of Duty has been all about for the last handful of years.
Yeah, now it's the travel is actually in line with how much it's been in like past years. So travel shouldn't be an issue. I think this year is gonna be one of those like build years. I don't think this is gonna be the year that like the league like blows up and is like
Well, sure.
crazy level proportions. But I think this is a good start, good foundation for next year. And I think as long as this year goes smoothly, the storylines build up and be how it should be, then next year we're in line for like a huge year because they're gonna be able to work out the kinks and see what goes wrong. And I really like how they changed it. Lee Ops did a great job changing it.
Yeah, very impressed. Nick, what are your general overall thoughts?
I think that it's a 10 times better upgrade than what we had last year, and I think it's about 100 times better upgrade than what we had like a month ago or however long ago. So like with this format, I think it's like the easiest to like grow upon in future years. There's definitely like things you can tweak to make it like better moving forward, whether it be like if they decide to add more teams down the line, I think you can get really creative with the format you decide to use for the league. If now that they've shown that they're not scared to step outside the default league format. So
Right.
I'm just excited for uh to see how this format actually like performs like actually playing out, but more so for just now that we know that this is something that they're willing to do, just the future overall of the CDL.
Yeah, very excited to see it. And the other thing to kind of come involved with that, we were talking briefly for a moment about ticket sales and how tickets could be super, super expensive for some of those weekends. How about this, though? A little bit of a different flip up. The Challengers also got a different kind of a format update, or at least a scheduling update, where all of the CDL home events will include at least what I'm calling minor tournaments, where there will be at least some form of a Challenger scene or Challengers competition that are happening that'll be organized and put on by the CDL teams. And that was one of the things about the open events in years past is you got to keep in mind that sure there is probably an authentic audience that is there just as an audience, but most of the audience is fueled by teams that have been knocked out from the open bracket. They're kind of doing a 2-for-1. Sure, we'll go and we'll give our go at the open bracket, but when we're out, then at least we still have something to sit around and watch while we're there. So generally speaking, as we go to the home events, including their own CDL team ran tournaments for the challenger scene, what are your takes on that? Because for me, it feels a little bit strange because let's be honest, there are challengers players out there that want to play in everything. Everything that comes available to them, they want to play in. And it's going to be pretty hard, I think, for a lot of these organizations to afford to be able to send whatever their core 5 roster is to every single weekend event. So, with less available team spots and a smaller prize pool, what are your takes on these kind of minor tournaments as we get into next year?
So we were actually talking about this last night. So now it's not going to be 24 events, obviously, like it was before. So there's not 24 AM events potentially. So it's a lot less travel and everything for even the AMs because I believe they're going to try to do an AM event every single homestand. So now it's only down to like 12 to 14 for them, which is a lot less travel, which means it gives chances for orgs to actually be able to like finance that. But compared to like if it was 24 events, there's no way orgs can finance that.
Right.
So having 12 is actually a boost for good orgs to come in. I know the prize pool is only going to be 10K based, and then it's going to be whatever teams want to put in. I believe that's how it's going to be set up. So it's not a huge prize pool, but at least it's something, and it's something dedicated straight to the AMs. So I think this year, obviously there was a lot of changes I would make personally, but it's gonna be decent. I would much rather see qualifiers because you're gonna have like these
Same.
32 to 64 teams, and I would rather have like the top, let's say it's 64. I'd rather have the top 32 teams from like a past event automatically make it in, and then have qualifiers for the remaining 62. I think that would be fair, or something along those lines to where instead of who can buy a pass quicker makes it in, there's actually it's more of a competitive balance. And I would also somewhat. I know everyone is against like the league format, but I would actually much rather want to see a league format somewhat for AMs where the top AMs get more screen time because right now, even with these open events, not every match is gonna be broadcasted, obviously. So most of these AMs should be concerned about like getting their image out there and showing their game, like their gameplay for next season if there's more teams or for recruiting processes. So I'd like to see like a set like AM like league where like maybe like the top 12, top 24 teams play league matches as well as these tournaments. Because not only would that incentivize big orgs to come in because it's more screen time for them, but you'd see more of these AMs get screen time for their gameplay, which is good for the long run.
I've been seeing the same thing. Initially, when Challengers was announced that Path to Pro was going to happen this year for Call of Duty, uh, I was kind of looking at it with almost a basis of how does Overwatch Contenders work, to where it was like an open system where you have anybody who wants to play can participate. It then goes into a challenger system where the top teams exclusively will play in essentially a league format. That was kind of what I was thinking initially, was maybe you have the top 8 amateur teams from each region or something like that, or top 12, or maybe
Yeah.
like it again, the dispersal that we have currently for your trip is paid for you. There's a little bit more influence towards North America than there is from EU, which has more than there is for APAC. Excuse me. But I thought the same thing, especially when it came down to these limited resources where you're dealing with only 32 to 64 teams, which is what the news post has said when it comes to these minor challengers competitions, is that there should be kind of maybe even a grace period to where if you did well at the last event, you get the chance and the opportunity to sign up for this pass earlier than everybody else just to give them some priority. But then you kind of get into the battle of the exclusivity might be too favorable. I don't know. There's a lot of things that kind of could be considered. Nick, what were your takes when you saw this challengers update?
The first thing that went into my head when I saw like how this was going to play out, it kind of reminds me a lot of like in AW, like the MES events. They were
Sure.
like they weren't like the UMG or the MLG ran events, but they were these, side things you can go to every couple months that were like 25K prize pool or something like that, or 10K prize pool along those lines. And you'd see like a few pro teams there, like a few of the lower tier pro teams in the MLG league would go, and then you'd see just like the top AMs there as well. But you wouldn't see any of like the top contenders there. So that's how I think it's going to be for like the challengers division. So you're not going to see the like top of the top teams go that much to some of these if the prize pool is just going to be like 10K and like stuff like that. But then you'll see these smaller teams kind of get their chance, hopefully, to like step into the limelight. But I know there's going to be some of those top teams that are going to, like you said, Shift, want to go to everything possible. That's CDL related for them in the challengers division. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I'm honestly not that familiar with like any of like on my end at least haven't heard anything about like what we're going to be doing for stuff like that. So
Hmm. It's interesting because I think that there are going to be a handful of players that are going to want to go to everything, but let's be candid. I just don't think that the organizations that are out there, especially the smaller ones that are, now that we have the championship points kind of coming through, like I don't know what the budget looks like for Team Sixth Gear. They're currently sponsoring the number 11 ranked team in North America. That's a squad that goes to a lot of locals. Fastball, I don't think has missed a major
Yeah.
local ever. And Reaper, Willet, Awakening, and Glowfrosty have really been making their move as well to get up there. That's a good team that you figure will want to be at these North American events at least. But the problem becomes if the orgs can't afford to send their full 5-man team, then I think we're getting more of a problem than what we had last year, where it came to, well, all right, this player from this team can go, this player from a different team can go, this player from the third team can go, and they make like pickup teams just to see who can go, will go with you. And then we're again dealing with the problem of identity based on teams when it comes to who is playing well. I mean, individually ranking players in the amateur scene is so difficult to do. That's one problem, I think, as far as having mixed match teams. But how about the problem for EU squads? If they want to
Yeah.
be able to go to some of these teams or some of these events that are, not major events, that becomes even more difficult because you have to travel all the way from Europe. And even worse, you put that situation on APAC, who have no home events nearby.
Yeah, I think if I was to change, so I talked to some of the AMs like here and there. So talking to them, I think one there needs to be like a set like season structure. Like some of these, so I believe there's gonna be like major events for AMs, and then like these homestand events are gonna be minor events. That should be like roadmap throughout the year. And then I would love to see like a season format, as I said earlier, for like if they're gonna do that, do it in like one for EU, one for NA, so we get all like everyone gets view times.
Sure.
But like it's kind of rough right now because there's no roadmap. So it's like, what events do you go to? What org? What are you going to get like comp for by your org? What flights are they going to send you to? Like, are they going to cherry pick events that you go to, or are they only going to do the ones that you guys live next to? There's just a lot of questions that come with it. So it's really weird. So they need to have a set season so there's more planning involved. So there's more because like as you said, like some of these lower tier orgs aren't going to have the finances to send them to every single one, and then it's going to start coming to pick up tournaments, and it's gonna be really weird once we get deeper into the season when all these teams are kind of faltering or when the main 10 teams are there. I don't know. It's really a lot of questions for me about that.
Nick, what are your kind of takes as far as that logistical battle goes?
Uh, I think that it's gonna be treated like you said for I think the EU especially. Like I don't think any of those teams are gonna be like you won't see any of these teams travel that much outside maybe one or two seeds. Um, and then my main point I was thinking about before was that with some of these teams, it's like shift. You kind of went over it though, so I'm not gonna try to take the time to go over the whole point again. But just the funding, I think, is the big issue.
Yeah.
Like for some of these orgs, like you're gonna have teams that just aren't like they're gonna want to go, obviously, but it's just not gonna work logistically.
Yeah. I mean, again, the thing with the logistics, and I think the exciting thing about the challengers initially was the fact that for the major events, you can qualify to get your team funded to go. You know, top 10 from NA, top 4 from EU, top 2 from APAC. So that's good. But that seems like it'll only be for things like the major events. And again, in the news post, if you guys haven't seen it, it's on callofdutyleague.com about
Yeah.
the challengers thing. They're talking about, in addition to the home series weekend events, there will be some select teams that will host additional Call of Duty Challengers events in their markets. And those will be dedicated to be ran by Activision Blizzard as those major events with major prize pooling. Whether it is $250,000 like we'll see at Minnesota or not is a different story. But at least it kind of gives some extra hope that, you know, initially we thought we'll see at least 3 Challengers major events. You had the launch weekend at Minnesota, the initial schedule also that there'd be a mid-season event that would happen, and then there would be a specific Challengers finals. There was, of course, looking at the schedule that, okay, maybe an LA event will be thrown into the mix. But now with this, we have at least the 2 events, the beginning and the end. And hopefully there'll be at least 3 in the middle as far as having like major events that are dedicated towards kind of more of an open style event as we come to know it in the past years. Do you think that maybe that I think we kind of maybe all agree on this, but it might just be easy to determine because like we have kind of circled around, a lot of these organizations are going to feel like every event is mandatory to go to. Do you think that just setting events as minors and majors would be enough of a determination as far as getting teams to go or not go to some of these events?
Yep.
I think that yeah, I think that just like that's how it will be like determining like the CDL team ran organized like events. Those will be like the minors. I think will be established once things get rolling. I think the community will kind of establish that in like their heads.
Yeah, I mean, looking
Oh,
at like a big org, like let's say like Heretics comes in and gets like a Spanish team, like if they're labeled majors and minors, they can easily just say, "We'll fund you to the majors. If you guys want to go to the minors, you know, we
mhm.
can discuss that at the time, depending
Sure.
on location, or you know, if you guys place well, because then you can put like all these incentives in the deal. Like if you place well at the majors, if you place well at like the Paris or London, then you can get funding for additional ones. So I think if there was a roadmap, it would be much more structured. You would have much more bigger organizations coming in. But right now, it's kind of like a mystery because there is none, and all we know is that there's gonna be 12, minor events. So yeah,
Real quick, personally, what I think would be really cool to see in like the challenger division, instead of just having all these like these minor events, like try to incorporate some sort of we talked about it earlier, but some sort of like online league. Like I think like a ESL like CS:GO system would be perfect for something like this. You have an online league for a certain amount of times for each region, and then you have a main event every so often where you fly, you fly out the top teams, and then you have that, and then on top of that, you could do like for the teams that didn't qualify for that, you could have that open challenger event and then like
Sure.
a top 4 or something qualify that pro bracket for the challenger thing.
I mean, even like us, when we have the points for the pro league now, you can have points for the AMs too. I mean, it makes a lot of sense to do it that way too, because then you can track throughout the year which AM teams are doing great throughout the year, which ones are you can see when they go up and down. So
Right.
I don't know why they don't have like
Hmm.
like a point system like anything for them. And if you did a league like that, then you can reward the teams for wins in there for with points. So it would
Exactly,
be
and you get more
beneficial for
screen
everyone.
time if you're in the league.
Yeah.
Like if they have like a challenger league, you're in that guaranteed 12, you're guaranteed screen time. So that's it'd be just another step to try to get into for like rising AMs. Like it's not just okay, let me be in the challenger and now all like the biggest step of all is getting to the pro level. Now it's let me be an AM, let me get to the challenger division. Now let me try to get to that like challenger league. Let me try to compete at some events. in that like extra part of the bracket. Let's say if like the top 8 teams from Challenger League move on, let me try to make like Challenger playoffs. Now let me try to make pro
Right.
level and stuff like
Yeah.
that. It's more progressive versus just I'm at Challenger level and we're just traveling to like open events like it's nothing and like with no screen time, and somehow I have to get like all the way up here to pro level.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I love about CS. Like the ESL, the ESA, ESL combo they have going. So
Mhm.
they rank you, and there's different ranks. So it's not just AM and pro. There's
Yeah.
pro, then there's advanced, intermediate, open. So like I would like it to see more divided up too. I definitely would love to see that.
I will say this, I think that all the ideas that are floating around, and I'm sure there's tons more out there in the community, I'm sure all of them have a ton of value. But the biggest thing that I kind of want to hit on is the simple fact that for a year one established, a more established kind of path to pro, establishing a challengers division, the opportunity that is there for the individual players, we'll say at least, is super high compared to what we've seen in Overwatch previously. It took a while for Overwatch to get its contender system to where it is now, and I think some people would probably argue that it's kind of even still year to year not really found an identity yet. I would love to see, and I think there's enough of a pool of teams and talent to do something where there is more of like an open challengers and then the pro kind of path. Again, that's the whole idea, is to have a path for it. I think a point system would be great. The biggest thing I'm more worried about, though, for some of these players and some of these teams is that they're going to feel like we've kind of hit on that they need to be at every single one of these events, and it's going to really stretch the identity for some of the orgs very, very, very thin. It's going to be very difficult to assign a player with a team, or even worse, a team with a group of players, because it's going to be, no offense to the Aspire guys, because they do a great job getting teams to events, but when you hear Aspire Esports, if you follow along with the Challenger team, you don't know what that roster is, because they have had so many different people play for them. It's very difficult to assign players to that brand, even though the brand itself has done very, very well in the last year and a half. It's interesting, I think, to say the least. Speaking of, though, when it comes to Challengers, there will be that major event happening in Minnesota, like we've talked about. We'll take some time to kind of go over some of the top squads from each region going into Minnesota. And as far as those rankings have gone, of course, with the last 2K coming to a completion this past weekend, there will be no more 2K events throughout the regular season. There will be a couple of 1K events, and of course the home series. Those are technically 10K events, so there will be 10,000 pro points or challenger points, I guess I should properly say, up for grabs at some of those events. But going into what our current standings are as far as the regions go, currently, we're dealing with Parasite, Spart, Pharaoh, Prolute, Space League. They're the number one NA team. They have looked absolutely insane the last couple of weeks. You also got UYU and Surge Academy, top 3 currently in NA. Most of those teams have players that at one point in time in their career were pros. Does that kind of speak to maybe the experience of some of these players and what impact they're able to have over up and coming amateur players?
Oh yeah, definitely. So a lot of these teams, if we had 16, 20 pro teams, like obviously like Parasite's team would be signed to an org like tomorrow if we had 16 teams. And like UIU's team is disgusting. Expire, the Doug Sensor Market, like the Moose's team and EU.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of teams like the Kings from APOC region. Like a lot of these teams are nasty and they have a lot of experience. So like Parasite's team is obviously can be, this is not nothing for them compared to, Pharaoh won an event in World War II. He's not sweating it out in a 2K compared to like all these up and comers. So it's kind of weird. I definitely put a lot more stock in those guys. And you know, that's pretty much what I take from it.
Hmm.
I think they're going to be disgusting. I think it would see, this is like the difference between like open teams and like the next level. I was like they would be like the top of that middle level if we broke it down even more. So that's, it's kind of hard to compare all these different regions too, which is, I just can't wait for the open events because I really want to see all these teams match up against each other.
Same.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any personal favorites as far as going into it? I mean, it's been interesting because I think there's generally been a battle between NA EU. I think last year it was mostly EU that kind of rose above the NA teams mostly. I mean, obviously with the exception of Mind Freak when they were running through the open events. But the EU team, the number one EU team coming into it, they will be the number one overall seed. That's Vortex, Dave, Moose, Petey, Denza. And just below them, they've got the second seed is the Royal Ravens Academy squad that has Mad Cat, Shawnee, Nolson, Wee Man, again, all former pro players at one point in time. Do you guys have certain, discrepancies as far as which region do you think will be better than the other in this one?
Isn't like hasn't how many 2Ks has War won consecutively for EU? Isn't
That's
it
a
some
good
absurd amount?
question. I think it's the last three. I'm gonna go back and
So they
check right
won
now.
they won on 11-23, 12-7, 12-14, and then they won the last one. I think I think
Yeah, they've won all of them. Wait,
uh,
actually,
the last one was Team Singularity at 11-16. And
Okay.
then the Royal Ravens won 11-9. So the top team's been pretty dominant now for a
They've just been
while.
winning since 11-9.
11-23 is when they won the first one.
11-23. Yeah, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks in a row.
I mean that's
Jeez.
just as
Yeah.
dominant as Kings are in APOC, and so
Mhm.
like
But, like, what you have to
to,
think about with APAC, it's like some of these teams aren't like if I look at these names at the top of APAC, I don't recognize or notice as many
oh yeah,
like of the
that
top
that's
names
just
that you did in like when APAC was like kind of popping off. So
Well, that I think has something to do with the fact that over the last 2 years, I would say the better part of the top 10 players at APAC have now been signed onto pro squads.
well, I
You've,
think
yeah.
you
even some of those names from last year, like you see a lot of names up here on like the top of the sheets that like were not like on any level of relevancy last year. So I
Sure.
think it's because they're getting, some of the best APAC players are getting picked out. You now have these like kind of lower tier players that are moving up. Not that some of these top teams aren't gonna go and make some noise. I actually think that FIDA's team is really solid,
I
but
think they're really
I
good
just
too.
don't
Yeah.
Yeah.
think I don't think you could put it on the same level as something like War has done or like what Haggie's team's been doing or
Sure.
like UIU at the beginning of the season.
It's kind of tough when you look at like the global battle for the AMs. I think they're like the top teams might be the EU guys, but I think like 3 through, or I think the APAC guys are obviously up there too, but like 3 through like 20 is all like the NA teams. I think like the top two EU teams are disgusting. They're nasty. I think
Mhm.
they're going to be competing for the championship. But then after that, the French guys. I love the French guys. They're up there, and like Team Singularity. But other than that, it kind of like falls off. And then
Don't
like
sleep
for like
on
the
Yakko and the boys.
yeah. So like
The
there's
Atlas
like five good
Lions.
EU teams, but then like you look at so like for the rankings, like the sixth best like AM team in NA is like Opt Gaming Los Angeles AM team or Atlanta's team.
Right.
It's so deep in NA right now that I think like you might have like these like the two or three top global teams, but then the rest is gonna be all NA. I think this is
It's
gonna be the year like NA is again like up top
I'll
for
tell
the
you
last year.
what. I'll say one thing, and this is not going to have any real meaning or relevance probably when it comes to Minnesota, but I'm excited to see both the Japanese teams
Oh yeah.
ranked as high as they currently are in the global rankings. The Libel and Vertex squad has stayed together almost exclusively. I think they only made one roster swap between the end of last year going into this year, and they're currently going to be
Yeah,
going in
they
as the
are.
number 12 seed. That was a squad that like was top 48, top 32 every single open event. I'm hoping they do well. And that's going to be the interesting thing as well. I think when you take a look at it, if you're one of those challenger-minded, either audience members, fans, or players, the simple fact that you have again the two APAC squads that got their funded given to them in Fida's squad and in Beaston's squad, they're the number 2 and number 5 teams overall. And I think generally we could probably all agree that neither of those teams are as good as what Mind Freak was last year. Although again, you have Setsi and
No.
Swifty and Fida that were all a
I
part
mean,
of that squad, but.
I'm gonna say it now, like whoever's bracket runs through that 5 seed is absolutely blessed. Like that
Sure.
I
Or
don't think it's
that two
I
seed.
don't think yeah. No, I think honestly, like whoever runs into that 2 seed, like I'm talking like first 3, 4 rounds. Like I think well, what's the rank of a team that a 5 will play early? Like in the 30s, I assume when you get to that like couple rounds deep, like somewhere in the 30s, I think like a 30th seed has a better chance to upset that 5 seed than
Sure.
like a team deeper does to upset the number 2 seed.
You
Is
got.
the Jap? This is a bit off topic. Is the Japanese team going to Minnesota?
I hope so.
I,
I
I
hope
want
so
to see them
too.
play. They won the
I
2K
really want to
there.
see them play. I really want to see
They
them play.
they they won the APAC 2K against
Yeah.
Buzzo's team. I remember seeing
Uh-huh.
that. So I want to see what they can do.
Yeah, they got a cool 30K.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Bunch of
they're
talented
sitting
ones
pretty
right
right
now.
now currently.
that's pretty
Then you've
awesome.
got Rush as the other one. They're sitting 24. That's the other Japanese team that
It's like
uh
Rush like change ups like their entire 5 like all the time. The only one I recognize is Greed, so couldn't tell you
They've
anything
like
about the
finished
other
really
players.
consistent. They've been
yeah,
third, fourth in the APOC for like
yeah.
Mhm.
every 2K. They came in
The only thing
second.
that worries about me with Rush and Greeds is that like it's like every time that he comes over to the States, it's like an instant first or second round like exit for them. So hopefully he's got a squad around him that could maybe get him past a couple rounds because I really want to see the Japan team pop off eventually.
I recognize Winred's name as well. I don't know if he played for Rush last year late, but yeah, Greeds and
I
Winred were the
want to
two
say
players that I remember.
I wonder if he was at that that Call of Duty World
I
Championship thing
think
in
he
Japan.
was in one form. Did you guys watch that? The Japanese national
Yeah.
finals?
Yeah.
So hyped, dude. I would love to have an
Yeah.
event in Japan. That'd be so
I
dope.
know, right?
So this is
It's
why I
super
kind of
cool.
like the 64 teams for AMs because it puts more like it's more interesting when you see like all 64 teams instead of like when you see like 200 and you kind of just lose all the names in it.
Yeah,
But if
same.
it's like the top 64 teams, like I would be pretty hyped to watch that
Yeah.
because then you would have like all these teams where you would just be able to focus in on their matches. But
We're
gets me
looking at
excited. Like
this really quickly, and I know for
So
you guys
here,
that are
I actually
listening in and watching on Twitch, this is probably gonna be a little bit lost because we're looking at a spreadsheet here. But
yeah.
where would you kind of like draw the line as far as for NA, EU, APAC is like this is where the line is drawn as far as these guys can compete.
so,
Like for
I
me, looking at NA, like I draw the line right around 24.
yeah, probably.
Like Phenom, Honcho, Foncho, Mongoose, Pow Infinity, all super solid players. That's Guilty Esports in the 24 spot. And even still, I think some of the squads that are in here would be a little bit like, okay, well, maybe not. But you've got like Sicario, who's been nasty lately. Example, Denial, Assassin, Silo, Sinner. They're only number 22 based off pro points. And I would put them in my top 10 in the world right now.
Who was that?
There's a lot of
Sicario.
Sakari.
even like some of the AM teams. There's a lot of them that could even beat out pro teams right now.
Oh,
There's probably
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
there's probably like the top like 8 AM teams right now could probably beat out like 5,
Dude,
6 of the pro
I would
teams.
maybe
That's why
even
I'm
say maybe
interested.
top 10. I mean, you got
I'm interested
Tiny
what you guys
Exceed
are
Squad in 10th and Gravity and Journey
Well,
on the Atlanta Academy squad.
Oh,
I don't know
I'm
if
talking like consistently,
on
like
on the
consistently the top 8
sure,
AM
sure,
teams for
sure.
NA could like consistently beat out like 6 pro teams, and like if it was like a tournament format, they could like probably like 10 teams they could probably like upset.
Hmm.
But yeah, that just talks to the talent that there is in the AM scene.
so that's what I'm shocked you guys are saying like so far down this list that you think like all the way down to you said 24 you think
I
you
would
could
say
beat?
like in the specifics, like in just NA challengers, like I
Yeah,
could see
here's
that
the thing is
24
like
squad finish top 8 if they get a couple of good bracket kills.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
I think
think
there's
that
like 5.
honestly I would cut it off after like 11 cuz I think that some of these top AM teams are like only like pretty much majority of their practice is coming against pro teams. So I think there's going to be
Hmm.
a way bigger skill gap once come land time than we realize for some
I
of
don't
these
know.
top
I
Yeah.
teams.
just that a Thame squad at 18, Sicario at 22. Those are like two of my dark horses going in to
I think it's
Minnesota.
also it also hurts like the EU like AM teams a lot because as Nick said, like all these NA teams are actually practicing against pro
That's a
teams.
good point.
And then all the
And
EU teams are in NA to practice.
I
So
mean,
yeah, so like
even
it,
if you were
every
to
team should have
compare the
one
top,
pro team.
yeah, the 11th seed out of NA versus the 11th seed in EU, like that's Reaper, Willet, Awakening, Frosty, and Fastball in NA, and that's the Animosity team in EU. Piero, Pazzi, Cookie, the
yeah,
German squad. I mean, like that matchup, like if those two were to play against each other, I don't think that would go very well for
I think
Animosity.
I think out of all tournaments we've had, like Minnesota, like for the open portion, I think is going to be one of those events where like we don't you might see no like international teams in the top 8 or something like that just because of like the practice levels that people have had over here in the States.
Mm, that's a good point. It'll be
yeah.
This
really
could
We
interesting.
easily be it. This could be easily one of those events where like War goes into it as like the 1 seed, yeah, and they like smoke a couple teams early, but they just run into the wrong like cracked out kids on like a Saturday night or something.
Hmm.
And
like I want to know who London Academy and War are playing against
Each
like
other.
yeah,
I
overseas.
think it's most of the top 4 teams have been playing each other.
I would assume Singularity's in on that, and then like I don't know if like Zeke and them would be. The next would be like
Probably
'Cause you
Ludi's team or
yeah,
you
Niles'
remember
Ludi's
team.
last
pretty
year?
good at this game, so I could see them picking some scrims up.
Yeah.
You remember last year when Heretics and Denial like went back home and like they would have like no one to practice against and like their form like dipped considerably in
Oh,
the pro league and those
absolutely.
tournaments.
Yeah. Well, it was once
Like
Red Reserve split. Like
yeah,
once that dissolved, like they had no one to scrim against back home because Red was the only like EU based, fully EU
yeah.
team left. So
Like we practice against like UIU, Parasite's team, Fellows team. We practice against those guys actually a lot. So they're getting a lot of good practice in against like top teams in NA. So
Hmm.
I don't know. I think it's just a different level of practice they've been getting.
So if we were just I'm gonna put you guys on the spot here. Let's just jump. I mean, we've talked a lot about this Path to Pro squad and the kind of the rankings that we have in front of us here. If you were to say, let's top 5 finishers, we'll do top 6. Top 6 teams finish at Minnesota in the Path to Pro. Who's your top 6? Doesn't have to necessarily be in 100% order, but
Kings, UIU, Atlanta, the top 3. I think Fellow, Parasite, and probably for the 6th spot, I don't know, probably Seattle's academy team. That's what I would do.
fair enough.
I
Like
would
that.
do. Oh, go ahead. Will you finish?
Yeah.
I would do Austin's list minus Seattle, and then I would throw in War.
Yeah, that's pretty much, it was like a toss up for me.
Yeah,
I think
I was
those
going.
5, like Kings are in NA
I
practicing.
feel like the top 4 are pretty locked
Yeah.
for me, at least.
Yeah, so
Like
I
I
think
feel like
Kings
I'm
are
pretty
definitely gonna be
confident
up
in my
there.
top 4. It's
Who's
the
wait?
fifth
I'm sorry.
spot.
Who's this Kings team that you're?
Is that the APOC? I didn't know if they got signed to a team. I know they were playing under Kings in the 2Ks. It's
Oh, okay,
Sessi,
okay,
Wimpy,
okay,
Pred,
okay.
Fida.
Yeah.
Got
They've
you.
been in the in NA practicing. I don't know when they got here, but they're practicing in NA.
Yeah.
So
Like
that's
they're one
like
of the only teams like
yeah.
internationally that like I'm confident because they're here practicing.
Yeah.
And because like Fight is disgusting.
Fight is
And
disgusting.
I don't get it, bro. He's absolutely sickening at this game.
Yeah, I
even
think
like
that.
And
our academy team.
Crim's is really good as well. Like
Yeah.
people underrate Crim's a lot.
Yeah.
Because he never really got any screen time because he wasn't big when APAC was like had its limelight.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And then like our academy team just got Journey over here. So they're finally like, we had a lot of internet issues. So this is like the first like we're actually striving now.
Well,
So
I
yeah.
watched Journey fill in for Paul and them from Athame yesterday
Oh,
during
yeah.
the NGE playoffs, and he just destroyed everybody, dude.
Yeah,
He's
That was
what you were telling
that
me
was his
about?
first day.
yeah,
Yeah,
you're
he's
talking
he's
to me
nasty.
nuts. He's nuts,
Let's
dude.
go.
He's absolutely nuts.
A little bit
It's
off topic, but like that Heretics not getting the franchise spot, like it's like really sad for like
I was
the
so
Spanish team.
heartbroken.
Like I would love to see it, but like that might be like best case scenario for like the 3 guys that got signed to a franchise, because now they're playing internationally and they're English, they're gonna be really like fluent in English by the end of the year. So like all their options next year are
Oh
gonna be
yeah.
like wide open compared to if they had a Spanish team. Like would they be learning English? Would they be playing on an international level, or like would they be playing like in international mixed teams? I don't think so. So like
So
this
like
might be like the best thing that happened to their careers, like for them personally.
also you have to take into account not only now do they not have that, or now that they have that international practice like with the North American
Yeah.
teams, you also have North American insight on your team now.
Oh,
Not many people will
absolutely.
take
Yeah.
that into consideration. Where like yeah, like a full EU team coming out here, like Fight's team coming out here is great for their practice, but you also don't have some of the insight that maybe some North American players are just more well versed in some of the stuff about the game right now. So like there's that aspect to it as well. I think some of these Spanish and like international players will benefit from playing on more North American rosters and in the United States.
That's a
I want
super
to see
good
more
point. Never
mixed.
thought about that.
I want to see more mixed AM teams, like
Yeah.
because there's some nasty like I think Whalers was like one of the most underrated ARs last
I
season.
still think
Like,
he's one of the most underrated
Well,
ARs.
you have some of these teams
Yeah.
where it's like if you like these if some of these AM teams could play internationally, like you would see some really solid rosters formed because these top teams like one player shines in a specific role. And then if you just combine like each top player of each AM team, I mean, it'd probably be like a top pro team.
Yeah, like you can go through
Interesting.
the top like EU teams right now, and you can pick out like 2 or 3 guys for like each of the top 10 teams. And if you put them on an A, like mix them in with an NA AM team,
Oh,
like
they'd be silly.
yeah, it would the AM scene would get better drastically if that could happen. I can't wait. I want that to happen next year.
Yeah,
Like when there's
I'm
more
excited to
funding and more
see.
stable.
I'm actually more excited for Minnesota from the challenger side of things than I think for actually from the pro
Same.
sides of thing.
I would agree outside of like
Well,
maybe
outside of like every match that
the
Dallas
Empire
plays.
match, yeah,
Yeah.
the 2 Empire matches, obviously our matches, and then like probably the London versus Paris match. I think that's there.
All right. Speaking of, though, that's a good transition. Thank you for that easy segue. Let's finish off this episode here with expectations for Minnesota. The best way to do this might be, who do you guys have coming out 2-0? And who do you have coming out 0-2 for sure? I think is probably the best
Yeah.
way of doing it. And I'll let you guys get a second to go through the schedule.
Yeah.
The
I'm gonna
reason
pull that
why
shit
we
up.
were kind of talking about Dallas is that they've got Chicago Huntsman first game up on Friday, and then the last game on Saturday they play the Atlanta FaZe. Now, granted, the team has been doing very well versus the top of the CDL, but it is by far the hardest schedule through Minnesota. Beyond that, though, you also have a couple of teams that honestly probably had a pretty easy run of it. You look at Minnesota, they play the Los Angeles Guerrillas and the Toronto Ultra for their two matches at Minnesota. So with that kind of in mind, who do you kind of have going 2-0 and who do you got 0-2 starting off the season?
I think the easy pick's Minnesota going 2-0.
I think so too, for
Obviously.
sure.
But like I think they're like criminally underrated. I think they're like tied for third for me for like ranking wise.
Put them
Yeah,
at
I think
5.
yeah, I got them really high because they're nasty. Like their sub duo, Zog, or I keep saying Zog. Their sub duo is nasty. And like it got Rex has been playing he's like probably the best player that plays against us. Like statistically, he's probably like the top player right now against us. And as long as Silly and Assault show up, they're top. I think they're a top 3 team. But yeah, I see Minnesota's going 2-0. I think I think New York could go 0-2.
I think New York could go 0-2 as well.
Damn it, you took mine, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
They've
that's
got
tough.
they've got the London Royal Ravens on Saturday morning, and then they got the Atlanta FaZe midday Sunday.
I mean, I would favor them against London, but anything could happen against Maddie and the boys. So I
Yep.
wouldn't. That's not a given. And then obviously I would favor our team over them in the Sunday matchup. But if they lose against London, that could be an easy 0-2 day.
What are you looking at, Nick? Any teams in particular?
Yeah,
I got my
so
eyes on Seattle
so
as
I've
well.
got yeah, that's what I was about to say. I have 2-0s and then 2-0-2. So I actually think I think that we're gonna go 2-0. I think that the boys are gonna go out there and shock, like, not shock, but like prove a point against Dallas when we match up against them on the last match of Saturday. And then I think that Seattle's gonna go 2-0. I really like them against Florida, like the matchup
I do
wise,
too.
and then they have Ultra to close out on Saturday. For 0-2, I have Optic going 0-2. I think Paris actually gets the upset.
Hmm.
Just because that I don't really think that, like, obviously Paris hasn't really practiced much, but
It was
them
the
getting
first day.
going, getting going a little bit, like even that, like how disastrous the Optic stuff has been.
I mean,
Um,
Optic hasn't been good, but I don't think they
Yeah,
would
but
lose
it's
to
also like
Paris.
it's one of those scenarios where like there was those teams that we never see before and they just come out hot like on their
Oh,
first
for
match.
sure. I mean,
Like it could
Heretics did
definitely
that
be
all
a
last year
situation
at the
like that.
beginning of the year.
Mhm.
I don't know. It's
And
just
then
tough. You don't practice. I mean, the Optic only practiced for like a month now, but still, like
It's
no
more than what
practice.
Paris has had. It's just 0, right? Yeah.
Like today was literally their first day against.
mhm.
I think they
But like
played somebody on stream today, but
as well with like a lineup like Paris, like they have multiple options to go through. So if they just find like one roster that clicks like for a specific weekend, like or like a specific matchup, for instance, if like just matchup wise it just works well for them on specific maps, you never know.
here's a good one. I have Florida going 2-0.
I have Florida 0-2.
Really?
Or
I
one
think
and
if
one. Sorry,
I've got
sorry.
Florida
One and
going
one.
1-1. I've got them losing to
One and
Seattle.
one.
Although I think the Seattle Florida game is going to be a really good one. I'm actually
Yeah,
like,
Me too.
I
I'm
think
hyped
the
for that.
matchups on Friday, the first two matchups on Friday are going to be really, really good. Chicago and Dallas and Seattle and Florida are going to be really good games, I think.
that's another one. Like I think I would favor I would favor Seattle, but I think Florida. Like if I'm doing like my top 5, I'm doing Atlanta, Dallas. Tied for third is probably Chicago and Minnesota, and then I'd probably even put Florida in as my 5. I think they like, and I was really down on them at the beginning of the
Yeah,
year,
I'm still a little bit down on them, but it's
and then like
slowly.
if we're talking honest, like they are like one of the only teams that takes like consistent hardpoint maps off us in scrims.
Huh.
Like, now I'm not talking like they take 4 or 5. Like they win a handful against us. Oh, because we practice against them a lot. Like they have talent. So I think they're definitely, I think Minnesota and Florida are my sleeper teams. And I think if I'm looking at teams who are gonna falter, I mean, you got New York's up there. I mean,
Yeah, I've got
I
New
don't think.
York, London, middle of the pack with
Yeah.
Florida, Seattle, and then really from there, it's a pretty big gap. I mean,
Yeah,
Toronto,
after that, it's just
Paris, both LA squads have not really shown me anything that's like, oh, these guys are going to be able to have upset potential early in the season.
it's tough. It's kind of hard, like predicting like 2 matches at the beginning of the year that are just kind of like warm up
Mhm.
matches.
Well, for sure.
Yeah, like looking at like London, that's what I'm like excited for. But
Mhm.
I don't know because it's kind of like I don't know how like the mindset's gonna go for like let's say Dallas loses against Chicago. Like how does your mindset go from like one match to you have to sit on that for an entire day?
Right.
But let's say like Seattle does get upset, like they go in on against Toronto on that Saturday.
Pretty early on Saturday, too.
Yeah, I mean it's tough
It's
looking at
even
that.
even like you think about it, like if Dallas goes in there and smokes Chicago, they gotta wait till Sunday to like redeem themselves.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, yeah,
Good
it's like
point.
even with this like the Minnesota weekend, like there's chances that's like even Rocker if they like somehow lose to Gorillas, like they gotta wait till last match of the tournament to play again.
yeah.
So
That's the tough part.
or the weekend of the tournament.
Yeah,
Good point.
Speaking of the Dallas Chicago match, I actually think it's not gonna be close. Like I like Dallas in that match.
I do
uh,
too, but I still think it'll be a fun one to watch, mostly for the narratives and the fact that it's literally opening the entire league up with some pretty
Mhm.
hot drama.
Oh yeah, it's a spicy
yeah.
match to open it up. I just
I
think it's gonna be like one of those scenarios where like in prior years we would hype up like an Optic versus Rise or something, or an Optic versus 100 Thieves, and then it'd just be a clean smoke. Like
I
it wouldn't be as close as
it's
we'd
it's
expect
really
it to.
funny because I think a lot of people are framing it up like we've talked about, like it's going to be a super tight matchup. But even the betting lines like are not favorable to either team like at all. Like it's like
Mhm.
minus 170 if you bet Dallas, and it's only like plus 115 if you bet Chicago right
it's
now,
like
which
tough
is like
because
nothing.
we don't know like any of the stock for like the S&D. So like if we were
Exactly.
like go through match by match, like so like the first match Chicago Dallas, like I'm 100% favoring Dallas in the Dom. They're gonna absolutely it's
Yeah.
gonna be like a 270 to 120.
I was watching Huntsman's. They were struggling against I think it was Florida in the Doms. Like they
Yeah,
couldn't overall their Dom game just doesn't look great.
yeah.
Hardpoint depends on the map, honestly. Like I was watching them, they were running around like with their heads off on Ramaza and other
Like I
situations, but
yeah. Like if you guys want to go through each of the matches, like so like the
We could
Dallas
we
and
could breeze
Chicago.
we could breeze through them real quick if you
yeah.
want. I mean, we're already at
Yeah.
8 o'clock, so we can make it quick. But I think you're right. I think Dallas has the edge when it comes to the Dom. I think Search and Destroy is gonna be kind of a mystery, but I think even still, I think just based on what I've seen from Dallas, I think they still have an edge in the Search over Chicago.
Oh, they got to. Any team that has
No,
Illy and
100%.
Shotzi, and
Absolutely.
yeah. So like if I'm going, I'm saying it's a 3-0 because like
Yeah, that's what I think.
I mean Chicago, they only have I mean they're good on the hard points, but I feel like every good hard point map they have, Dallas is disgusting at too.
hmm
So I feel like
It's like
I'm taking that 3-0, 3-0
every map that
Dallas.
Chicago's bad at, like I feel like Dallas is like disgusting at.
Yeah,
Like just next level. So I just think the matchup is just really not that great for them.
yeah. They only have like one good Dom map,
hmm
and Dallas is you veto that, and then it's gonna be like the other two maps are Dallas's like strong maps, so it's so tough.
Yeah, no.
And then yeah, then the next match you got Seattle and
Seattle,
Florida.
Florida.
I'm saying
I'm leaning
3-2
I'm leaning
Florida.
left. I'm leaning left Seattle.
Yeah, I'm leaning left Seattle, but I think it could go to 5 as well. I actually like what Florida's put together in the Search and Destroy world, so I could see if this one does go to 5. I really could
Yeah,
see Florida pulling this one out because they have looked pretty complete in Search. I haven't seen
yeah.
much
So
of Seattle though, to be completely honest. I don't watch a lot of Seattle streams, so
I would
Yeah, I haven't
favor
seen much.
Florida in the hard points. So then you look at the
Yeah, chain smokes the snail.
if you look at the S&Ds, that would be tough. And then like the third matchup of that day, I think that's gonna be the a quick
that's gonna
3-0
be the
for
biggest 3-0
Minnesota.
of the day. Yeah, easy.
Yeah,
Fargo's got that one on lock. No way he lets Pat beat him.
yeah. And then starting up Saturday, who do you guys got in the New York London?
I got
I
London.
I think London can win that game. I think New York is actually the team that's favored in the lines. Yeah, New York is favored actually pretty heavily in the lines. They're
Mhm.
minus 170, but I don't know, man. I think London is going to be cooking up something. I think they're going to come with
Dude,
the
I
right
think they're
map
gonna
set.
fly in on. I think they're flying in like no pun intended because their logo's a bird, but I think they're gonna be flying in under the radar in this weekend. I think they're gonna come in and just like one of these matches, they're just gonna look really really solid and just be like we have to remember like oh shit like London exists.
Yeah.
We
But
have
I
to.
think the same situation. I mean, like, I give a lot of credit to like what Revan is able to do coaching wise. I think he comes in with a really solid game plan, and this New York squad feels like it's like a team that he handpicked and the one that he wants. Like,
Mhm.
I know last year, like, it was hard for Evil Geniuses, but that team at the end of the year, when Revan I think finally found the formula that he wanted for Evil Geniuses, like they could have been with more time a top 4 team. And they were
Yeah.
one win away for being a top 4 team at World
They were one
Championships.
spawn away,
Yeah,
one
what?
one
Yeah,
one Arsenal hardpoint spawn away from being
yeah.
a top 3. Like, yeah.
I,
But
I
at the
I just
same
think
time,
that
you
with
also have to
that,
keep in mind. Oh, go ahead.
so I was saying with that, I think with Revan handpicking this squad, I think that they're going to be a much better team off the rip. It just comes down to I have not been impressed by what I've seen yet. They've
Mhm.
just been kind of living in that, like I said, like that middle ground. New York and London, I kind of have in that like 6-7 spot right now.
Yeah, I
Like,
think it's the
yeah,
perfect match
I
for
don't.
both of them to open up.
I'm not as high on them as the public is. It's kind of hard because everyone's trying to do like their power rankings right now, but they don't have like the insight
Yeah,
of like
there's literally it's all guessing at this
yeah.
point. Let's be honest.
So, like a lot of people have New York in the top 5. I think this match is gonna be really close. I have like New York like ranked like 8th. So I like this New York London match. I favor New York probably 3-2. I like the like Tommy. Tommy's been playing really good, so I think Tommy's gonna light it up against them.
Well, I just don't know. Like, I have to see accuracy and temp work again to
That's
be
a good
confident
point.
in this team. Because after the fallout from Splice, and then the stuff where he was like, he doesn't want to team with accuracy again, and then not even a full season later, they're back on the starting roster
Right.
together for New York. So I just have to see that work a couple times and like make sure that that's just not going to implode again before I put some stock into this team doing anything. But I think that they have a lot of talented players, and if they can make it work, it's definitely potential for like a top 4 roster in this league.
Totally agree.
Yeah, I think their ceiling could be high. I don't know. I
Mhm.
still have them middle of the pack.
Yeah,
I think
some of these teams have way too much talent where I just
yeah.
can't put them like even if they're all frying. I think that some teams just edge them out.
That's a good
There's
point.
like 3 or 4, I would say. I think like I would put them on like all playing their best in like the little bubble with Minnesota and Chicago.
I think to be like a top team, like you look at us in Dallas. I think if you want to be up there with us, you got to think of like how our team's gonna make it through the lows too, because like a lot of these tournaments you're not gonna win.
Hmm.
Like I have confidence that like Seattle can like keep their edge. I have like confidence that like Minnesota can keep their edge. I like if a bad tournament happens, I don't know if New York's gonna implode. I don't know if they're gonna I don't know if they're gonna be hit in stride. So if they lose against London, like even then, they play us
Dude, like
next.
one bad loss, I can totally see
Yeah,
this.
that's a
Yeah,
and that is a big thing.
it's
Even
kind.
last year, it kind of felt like with Splice, it was like, oh, we'll just add in
It
one
was
player
it
and
was
hope it's
denial
six.
for them.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, true.
It was they would struggle against denial and then they'd lose full against each
Yeah,
other. It was like,
yeah.
and they would win majority of the matches against denial. It'd just go 5 mats and be super stressful, which they didn't need it to be. So like let's say they struggle against like Ultra this year, and every single time they play Ultra, it's just like they have their number for some reason, and it's just like it just causes one little snap that just ruptures in the team, and it could send everything like down the
Yeah.
wrong path.
I'm the same way with like New York and Chicago and
Yeah.
Optic
Well, and
LA.
like,
LA.
yeah,
Both
and I know
LA
that's like
teams.
very,
Both
and I
LA
know it's
teams.
very hypothetical to
Yeah.
say. Like, I know it's very hypothetical of me to say, like, oh, like one little argument could break apart an entire team. Like, obviously, but especially with these rosters of players like that are with each other,
The
like it's
history
more
speaks
than
for
ever. I feel
itself.
like it's
I've
more than ever. I feel like
yeah.
we have more proof and evidence in history that these players together don't mesh well, or like this player has like a certain track record in his career of certain attitude problems or certain issues with communication or something like that. Like we're just gonna fall back on what we know. So
Well,
until we are
it's
proven
tough
otherwise.
because you can't
Yeah.
like break up teams like last year.
Hmm.
It's so much harder now because you have to sign them under your salary cap, and they have to be you have to make them a substitute, and then you have to put them on your salary cap. And a lot of
It
these
would be
teams,
interesting to see if there's any cap penalties if you like release players
there
and
is.
stuff like that. Okay,
Oh,
cool. Like if you're
so
like like you cut a player, like if you sign to a certain deal, you have to pay a certain amount of money and like a cap hit that you cut
yeah.
him for or whatever. Like if there's stuff like that, so a player just can't outright lose his position
Low
mid-season.
key, that's another reason why I like we're our top 5. That's why I like those teams even more because the players that are on the substitute roster for Atlanta, for a team like Chicago, for Minnesota, they're all really good players that could just fill in. So like if you do have a problem or if something's not clicking, there are viable options. Like General as a substitute for Chicago, I think is absolutely a steal.
Well, see, that's why I don't like about New York's team really, is because
They got
I haven't seen
Happy and
They went
Censor.
they went
yeah.
friendship route and like content
So
route.
how are you gonna plug them? Let's say something goes wrong.
It's the
You're not
same
gonna
thing that
plug in
happened
either
in
of those guys.
Splice. They picked up Happy and they picked up who was the EU player that came over and filled in for
Nolson.
him? Nolson. They
Nolson.
picked up
Yeah.
those two, and then when there was team problems that eventually always occur with a temp team, it's shown they had to use an EU player as a sub for half of their season, and it
Right.
really hurt their standings in the pro league when you saw them fall from like top 3, and then they finished
Yeah.
the season like 8-8 or something.
And
Yeah,
this year's even
That's
harder
that
because
stint.
not a lot of these teams have cap room, so it's
Yeah.
like you gotta like if any AM player like wants to even come up, you gotta sign them to a deal, and then they count against their cap. So I
Oh,
mean,
it's 10 times worse this year too
yeah,
because it's events. So it's not like you're just playing a sub with some meaningless league matches like last year Luminosity or something. Prove
yeah.
that
We
like the
just
league
yeah
matches didn't
we
really mean
lost out in a
shit.
couple of dollars.
Yeah.
No, like, those points
Like
are huge.
so
so
like,
you can't just go in and be like, all right, well we'll just figure this out after our splits over or after our weekend's over and stuff like
Right.
that. Like no, all these weekends matter and every single event has like money on the line and like points on the line and you know.
Yeah, I really do feel like the teams that did go the content creator route that didn't really fill out their substitute rosters are really going to come into a lot of headaches because again, I think you hit it on the head there when you're talking about DC back where it came down to the fact that you can't just freely sub out players. It's not like a roster mania period like the Overwatch League when it came down to like subbing out players. Like again, major moves have to be made. The contract swaps have to be made. There's a lot of things that have to go on behind the scenes and yeah, I'm definitely a little bit worried about that from the New York side of things. Blow through the rest of these. So Seattle,
Here,
Toronto.
real quick. Can I
Yeah,
get one more thing in?
go for it. Hit
Like
it.
another thing that's also big about these teams that did like content subs is that they are kicking themselves now that this format got changed because before it was fine. Like, you can have a league match in across the world, send your sub out, or something like that. Now it's like it's tournament based. So what are you
Right.
gonna do if you have an issue within a team and you have to sub out for an entire weekend,
Yeah.
versus
I think
just
that
one
that
match on a random Sunday?
I think you're kicking yourself if you don't have an academy team. 'Cause,
I think so
Yeah.
too. I absolutely think so
I
too.
think I wish academy teams were mandatory.
yeah, I wish they were too. Because first off, you're gonna have like Chicago, like you don't have an academy team. You have your general and Bows are just gonna be,
Yeah,
it's
what are
kind
they
of hard.
doing all
They're
year?
gonna be playing tens to
Yeah.
check off the roster because not a lot of these. Actually, none of these subs are getting practice right
Well, to
now
be
unless
fair
you're on an
too, again,
academy team.
you gotta keep in mind that the dedicated sixth man isn't allowed to play
I
in
don't
Path
I
to
don't
Pro
know.
or whatever it
I,
is.
No,
I don't know what that it is because technically,
yeah.
like I haven't heard anything from our side.
Have you
I
really
mean,
not? Because like that was the whole
no,
thing with Chino was that he was going to
I
be
that
playing
blew my mind
for.
because I didn't know what that was.
Huh.
I don't know because I haven't heard anything from Seattle side. I haven't heard anything from our side. Minnesota,
Mhm.
they just did the 2K this past week with their roster. So I mean, LA is the only team I've heard that with. So
That's the
I
thing that's really weird about it, and that's why initially I was thinking that
yeah,
that
I had
was the
no clue
case
what
why
that
they
was.
didn't put
Well,
Chicago. They didn't put something out.
also, it's like with these subs that are just going to be sitting around all year, like you're not practicing with like your own team or anything for like an academy roster. Like I would be 10 times more confident halfway through the year going to someone on like Minnesota's academy roster than like
Yeah,
someone maybe talent wise is better, but has been sitting around all year just
Right.
on the bench. Like
yeah.
I would
Like I saw
much rather
Blast
have
tweet
someone
out
who's been
today.
active. Yeah.
I saw Blast tweet out today that he already missed his scrimming, and I'm sitting there thinking like if he subs in for first off, it's gonna be a bad look for him because he's gonna be coming in with like a
Uh oh. Uh oh. Discord just crashed. Hold on here, guys. Literally, Discord 100% just crashed. See if I can reconnect here. Uh oh. This is awkward. Big time. I guess it must have happened to all of us. I think Nick just in chat just said, gave me the rip sign. Okay. Well, we might just have to cut things here, unfortunately, for you guys. I hate to do this, but it's not looking good as far as getting everybody back. So we'll probably just have to call things here, unfortunately, for you guys. I know the conversation was just getting really spurred when it came down to the 6-man and everything like that with the rest of the guys on the podcast for this episode. But we're going to have to call the wrap up here for the response. I guess Discord did not want to play with us nicely, so we'll call the quits here. To everyone who's out there watching live on Twitch, make sure if you missed some of the show, you can catch it by going over to your favorite podcast provider, whether that be on iTunes Podcasts, Google Play Music, or, of course, on Spotify, if you prefer to see the actual action coming through. Oh, wait. Hello? Are we back?
Yeah, we're back.
Okay. That's... Okay, thanks for Discord doing that. Did you guys all get kicked too, or is it just me?
No,
It's you.
Oh, that's...
we continued on. We're breaking
we're
down
like,
the matches.
We're down on Sunday now.
Oh, what the hell? Well, let's go
No, we'll
backwards.
back,
In
we'll go back. Yeah,
Seattle,
we're on Toronto versus
Seattle, Toronto.
Yeah, we've taken
hopefully in Seattle.
3-0.
100%. I mean, I guess like just generally speaking here for Toronto, like, do you feel like this roster could be better? Because again, like they've got like 10 players to pick from.
It's like you have to like, specify like what roster is the thing. It's
Sure.
like, one roster could be nasty, and then one day like one player could completely change the mix.
Do you,
out of
I
the
mean,
10
you
they
guys have more insight than I would. Do you know what the 5-man preference is looking like for Toronto?
From what I've heard, it's
It's-
just like a different team every day.
Yeah, it's different every time we practice against
That's
them.
tough.
So it's like they have like their like core three that they have, you know, Looney,
Methods, Looney, and Classic.
Is it Classic or Brack?
Brack's been in and out.
I've heard
when we
Classic's
played.
really good at this game.
Yeah, he's good. Well, it's like an MP5 meta. This is it's like
Yeah.
back because like a lot of people forget he was actually really good like 2-3 years ago. Like he was
Mhm.
an all-star.
Nasty.
Yeah. So it's kind of like this is him like coming back, and then like the 5th man has been like a revolving like we've literally practiced since Mayhem, Kleenex, Cammy, Brack, or Bance, Methods, and like Cammy. Like they've all practiced against us before.
Hmm.
So it's like they keep like the same 3 and then they rotate them out to see what mixes. So yeah.
Oh, interesting.
I saw some.
We're all
Someone
leaning.
talk about the slide cancel.
Oh, let's not get into that conversation.
I love it because I love pissing people off.
I know
kind of.
you do.
Like I do and I don't, but like a lot of like I gotta say this one thing. A lot of people think that like our team's nasty because if some misconception of when Lamar got pissed off and said that teams have been hiding it from other teams, that's BS. I'll come out and say that first. That's bullshit. It's like literally I linked my team one
There's
week
like a
into the game.
tutorial on YouTube.
Yeah, 1 week into the game about how to slide cancel, and if you didn't know that, then you haven't played the game enough.
Mhm.
That's your own fault. I don't know what teams have been getting that. No one
There's
hit
like
it
a-
from anybody
Yeah.
unless they're accusing Dallas, which I don't know. But like people think like we're only good. Like I don't know. Okay, people think the Atlanta team, the Atlanta players are only good because of a slide cancel.
That's
BS
ridiculous.
to the max
Yeah, it's absolute.
one because. And it's so hard to see, but like we we usually like try to challenge ourselves more than any team. Like we played scrims without telling anyone, without like the 10mm rounds on MP5, and like still fry. We played better without the 10mm rounds than with it. And we didn't say anything, but like teams don't understand that. And then we don't even slide cancel. Like we meme about it to like the max right now, and I think it's hilarious because everyone's getting pissed and thinks that like I see more rip Atlanta on like slide cancel when the slide cancel is getting patched than anything, and we don't even need it. Our SMG duo, and like I consider Preston like an SMG now, is disgusting, and we don't need that to beat teams. I just think I just wanted to say my little piece on that because it has been blown out of proportion.
Go off, sis. Let's go.
Like
Running
I hate it. Like it's basically like it's a glorified slide cancel from last season, and it looks so much worse because of 12 hertz servers, and it looks so much worse because online in this game is terrible, and it's so much worse because every team is in their city now. So like if you don't have a daddy host, then connection's a huge issue.
Oh, I believe
so
it.
much worse because it's Modern Warfare. What?
Yeah, and you get like these slow. I call them the Power 4. They get one bad clip, and it's like the public sees it, and it's like it's all over.
Oh, sure.
And yeah, and
Yeah.
it's blown out. But like, I don't know, that's
I'm
just
more
my piece
so
there.
I'm more so shocked that like the sled like people have been complaining about like the sled cancel like getting patched more than they have been about like the MP5's hip
Yeah.
fire or
Dude,
something like
right?
that.
I was about to say that was
Like
the weapon balancing has
I'm
been
watching
completely
people
sidelined.
I'm watching like here, like my arm is like the ground. I'm watching like SMG players sprint and jump around corners and then like do this, like just
Oh,
bounce,
the
just
bunny
bounce
hop,
Yeah.
back and
yeah,
forth. And they're just hip firing, and I'm like this is not at all like
yeah.
what any SMG player has done in the past, and it's strictly because of how like broken the MP5 is right
Yeah.
now, and like the bunny hop.
But you got like the Power 4 turtles like changing the narrative, like the
Yeah,
Power 4 like turtles. Yeah, yeah.
the
You know the
tortoises.
four that they're just like making like that's like the key issue. Does everyone want to get fixed? Of course. Like it doesn't need to be in the game. But like I don't know. Like the narrative of like us not being good after it patched, oh, it's ridiculous to me.
Or the narrative of like us hiding it to try to get an advantage
Yeah,
or something.
That's just COD
ridiculous.
drama at its finest. Let's be honest.
It's
Yeah,
like
It
it was
always
literally
occurs
there were
some
tutorials on
way.
YouTube second weekend of the
yeah.
game. Like,
Yeah,
come on
exactly,
now,
But
exactly.
like
Let's.
I wish like people had this passion for everything else that's wrong in the game.
right?
Because like no one talks about 12 hertz servers anymore. Ridiculous.
It's
No
like
one talks about
we
the
accepted it as a
yeah.
community for some reason.
Like there's so much other
Like
stuff that needs to
I
get
get
fixed
it's
too.
hard to fix, but it's yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
There's that. Back to the matches.
Let's move on through the matches before we get completely sidetracked.
Forgot about that.
Gorillas in Florida. Again, I mean, there's not a lot of positives that you can say about this Gorilla team right now. I've got Florida taking this one 3-1, 3-0, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I got Florida 3-0.
Yeah, the only thing I like about gorillas is they're purple. So I got Florida 3-0.
Fair enough. I'm sure we probably won't hear about this match on Twitter since they've posted 5 times.
Probably.
Optic Gaming LA versus Paris. Next one up.
You might not hear about this one either.
3-2.
Well, true. Who do you got in that though? You got Optic or
I got
Paris?
LA.
Paris.
Yeah, I got LA 3-2.
I
Oh
got Paris
man,
3-2.
I don't know where I stand on this one, to be completely honest. There is part of me that says that this Paris team could be really good, but
Like,
at the
dude,
same
if they
point,
just
like
find-
this Optic team has just got so much already. This nutty players on it. Just comes down to figuring how you're going to use them.
They're nutty, but they've also been bullied in every scrim they've played this
Yeah.
year almost. Like,
Yeah.
you
It's
know,
tough.
it's like we did this. People, I think, are expecting this Optic team to pull 100 Thieves from last year because it's Slasher and Kenny again. But I just don't think that the players
Who's
that
going to
they're
be their
surrounded-
Priesthood and who's going to be their
yeah,
Crowder?
the players that they have
I
around
don't see it.
them, like Dashy and TJ, like the narrative around them has just constantly been like, you know, either late or just like not dedicated unless there's money on the line and stuff like that. So it makes sense why their practice is going so bad. And like you don't have your Priesta, you don't have your Crowder, you don't have an Octane. Like
Yeah,
that's
true.
big. Like people like I know like Priest and Crowder coming in was huge, but also like Octane, like he was a huge part of that team last year. You know, and like you know, there's a potential that JCap doesn't perform well. We've seen it before. So if something like that happens as well, it's only going to be even harder for this team to turn it around. I think the only way you turn it around really is if like every single player is just frying on all cylinders and there's an attitude change.
And like who's going to
Interesting
be the
takes.
selfless SMGs?
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't
That's
know.
a good point.
Yeah.
Finishing
but-
off
Kenny
Saturday.
and TJ are two players that don't fit that role.
So,
Yeah.
finishing off
As much
Saturday,
as, like,
Atlanta,
they're really good
Dallas.
players, but they just don't finish that.
I
I'd say
think you
3-1.
you guys got Atlanta winning that one, I imagine.
I got 3-1.
Actually, I'd say 3-2. I'll be modest here. They are light years ahead of everyone on Dom, like light years. So they're obviously going to take the Dom, and then I say split the S&Ds, and then we take 2-0 on the hard points.
Fair enough.
I'd
So
go
it could,
that,
depending on
or
how
I
the
think
picks
we
go,
just
it could be
split
3-1 or 3-2, depending on what the order
Yeah.
of picks are. Fair enough.
I
Going
think
into
we're
Sunday,
both-
Paris, London. That should be an interesting one as well. I mean, I think I've got London in this one pretty head over heels.
Yeah.
Gotta
say London.
love international matchups in Minnesota.
Yeah. That's a little bit tough. Is Paris going to be at the London weekend? I don't even know.
Let me check
didn't
them on the
look.
website.
I'm trying to frantically open it
They
as well.
are. Yeah, I have it right here.
They are.
They
They are.
will-
They are at
yeah,
the
they are.
London. Okay, that's good. That's good.
That's going to be awesome.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
We're not at that one.
Hopefully they play up against each other. That's the other thing that again
What
we don't
was
have the set
awesome-
schedule. So
Not to get like too off topic again, because we have a really good track record doing that right now. What is the one homestand that doesn't have FaZe, Dallas, or Chicago?
Seattle.
Seattle.
It has Chicago. It has Chicago, but it
has
doesn't
Chicago?
have FaZe or
Oh, okay,
Dallas.
Okay.
But like that's the issue. You have that, and then you have like the last homestand of the year has like every single of my like top 8 teams.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
like,
they
how do
do.
how do you,
They
like,
have the
even
Toronto series.
Ultra.
is-
yeah,
Dude, and then
it's
you have like
it's
the
tough.
Chicago home series. It's like
Even the
that's why I don't
even the
agree with.
Chicago isn't as good as the
No,
Minnesota,
you got
or
both
yeah, the
LA teams
Minnesota.
there.
Oh,
Mhm.
Minnesota events can be, if you
Yeah.
subbed out lag and put in New York, that would be the like a
Those are
really good
playoffs,
tournament.
Yeah.
Those probably
Yeah.
playoffs
Hmm.
right there. No, but the thing
Yeah.
is, with some of these, why I didn't agree. I think it was you, Austin, that tweeted like, "Are we gonna count these as like as event wins?"
Yeah.
Oh,
Like,
are
I
these
don't think I will.
championships? No, hell
Yeah,
no.
Yeah.
They are
I don't
not
think I will
championships.
because
It's gotta
some
be
of
it's
these,
gotta be like a
Every team
minor,
has to
like,
be there
there's a
at
new era.
least. Like,
every team
yeah.
has to be there, or seeding has to be in effect, and not just like predetermined first round matchups in the
No.
GS Open.
The only championship being crowned this year is the one at the end of the year.
Which honestly I like.
Yeah.
For sure.
So you have 13 minors and then one major.
It
then
will be weird though. I wonder how they're gonna do like what team like wins the grand final at the homestands, if they're gonna like have no trophy presentation, if they just like win and then they're done.
I
Like
mean,
normally we're so used to seeing like the champion like pick up a trophy and like
I
get an
don't think there
interview
needs
and
to be
like get the
trophies.
MVP.
I really don't think
I
there
know,
needs to
but
be.
I don't either. I'm just saying it's gonna be really
Be cool
weird.
for medals.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it'd be really
medals,
weird
sure.
at the end of the
Yeah,
weekend.
something
to see,
small.
like end of the weekend, and it's like, all right, stream's over. No more. Like
Yeah.
no ceremony or no everything. No interview. No after the whatever.
Well, let's be honest. We don't even know if we're going to have an interviewer this year based on the signings so far. So that's.
I assume they will.
That's
I
been
mean, we
sold
will,
there.
but it's
I'm
okay.
hoping for Puckett. I'm hoping for two.
I just
I want
slid that in there. Let's move on past that comment. Sunday. We already talked about Paris, London, Chicago, Optic
Yeah.
Gaming, LA. You got to go Chicago on that one. I think everyone's got
Yeah.
that one, no problem.
We were saying when you were disconnected, it would be absolutely hysterical if LA won.
It would be. It absolutely would be. With all of
Yeah,
the optic no longer exists
especially since if you notice, like there's kind of a little bit of a turn in like the vibe of like people's opinion, like because like Optic's kind of been killing with their content recently. Like they've made some really good pieces. The roster, yeah, haven't been performing, but like has some household names on it. So it's not compared to what it was when Huntsman first formed and like Hex just left Optic and stuff like that. Like the
right.
hate, I wouldn't say is that level. Like there's situations on Twitter where I'm seeing like people clowning Optic and then getting trash talk back. Like I wasn't seeing that a couple months ago. Like it was all Optic trash talk, but instead now it's like
Hmm.
they actually have like somewhat of a fan base again in a sense. Those that
Interesting.
like didn't want to move on, or like hey, now that like the stereotypical green wall isn't attached to the name, like I can finally enjoy this brand or something like that.
Hmm. Interesting
Yep.
thoughts. But again,
Some people just had that.
I think that everyone should have Chicago winning this one, probably no problem. New York, Atlanta. I think again, Atlanta is just too much of a team for New York, just period. And then even then, Minnesota, Toronto, battle for the North. I just got Minnesota just being the better team, flat out.
Yeah.
Sunday's actually
Minnesota's gonna
kind
be
of a
a real
boring
underdog.
day, actually, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've really just big names, but like not big matchups. Like
Yeah.
you got Scraps in there and Dylan.
Like we
Huge
don't even
names.
have.
The first one. You got the big names of the two. Every match below that, but it's kind of
I think it
it's
also
too
sucks
favored.
that we don't have Seattle and Dallas playing on the last day. Like it would be dope to have seen like Paris and Ultra and like Optic get their matches out of the way on like the first 2 days, and then you have the big powerhouse matches to end it.
Yeah, if you subbed out, that's kind of hard because
Like
Dallas
what if you
plays both
put
teams
like
that
what if
are
you
in the
put
last day.
Seattle? What if you put Seattle down in like Seattle's first match down in Sunday, or like
Yeah, if you
London,
subbed
New
Paris
York?
and London.
Yeah. But again, it's
Like,
Minnesota's
like,
event, right? I mean, like Minnesota has to close out their
Yeah.
own event, and it's the
Mhm.
battle for the North, so
Yeah.
there's a little bit of a narrative there.
Well, you could even replace like the Paris London event or
Yeah.
match, or the
But
Chicago.
that's gonna be a
Optic.
good one for EU. EUs are gonna eat that up.
Oh, for
I
sure.
mean, the storylines for all these make sense. Like the storylines for all these final matches are there. Like Minnesota, obviously they have
Yeah.
it's their event, so they have to close it. And then you have Atlanta versus New York. You have former FaZe members playing against the FaZe team. You have Optic obviously playing against Chicago, and then the Paris versus London is just an
Yeah, the
international
storylines
match.
are good. I just don't think the matches will be. That's the only problem.
Just like
Which is,
the
it
matches
is what
would
it
be
is.
really good.
Let's be honest though, like you think back to the beginning of Black Ops 4, like there really weren't any good matches then either. Because like you just have your teams that are just better and your teams that haven't figured it out yet. It's not usually until like week 3, week 4 before you start getting some upset potentials. I just think that this is just going to be a litmus test as far as, who is at the top. And I'm just excited because if London does go 2-0, their betting favor is going to go way up. I'm just going to soak all that free cash up, brothers. Telling you that.
Yo,
Who's
and
your
then- and then
MVP of the
next
weekend?
MVP of the week, like individual performer of the
Yeah,
weekend.
like player.
It's
Who do you
it's
think
got
will
to
be?
it's got to be somebody from either Dallas or Atlanta because they have the hardest matchups.
I'll tell you right now, for any of you guys making esport or like fantasy teams,
Shout out draft.
two players have been like criminally underpicked. And Celium, I can almost guarantee you he will be top 3 player coming out of this event. He's disgusting. And that doesn't take away from the other 4. They're obviously going to be up there too. But Abeezy's been like I saw he was going 20th in the draft. That's absurd.
Yeah, like we
But,
were,
like,
we were
those-
looking at that draft, and you were like,
Yeah. Celium's gonna be my MVP because I feel like a lot of people are gonna expect Simp to come out and like kill it, but so Celium's huge. I'm telling you right now, this is his year to shine this year.
Fair enough.
Uh-huh.
Excited to see it.
I think he's the best AR right now out there. Not even close.
Flex.
Oh yeah,
It's bold.
I've
love
seen some disgusting, filthy play coming out of scrims. So he's high for me.
Fair enough. Let's start to close things off here as we kind of ran through everything with a couple of question and answers. If you guys have any specific questions, feel free to let them out in the chat. Actually, I just saw that you just posted, Easy Man. Thank you for doing that. Beyond that, though, we did have one earlier, and I kind of want to take this question and turn it into the narrative of will there be maps taken out of the competitive rule set. This was from like the beginning of the show. I like the question. What are your thoughts on the maps this year? Arklov Peak, when it comes to Hardpoint, needs to be gone in my opinion. Ramaza Dom needs to be gone in my opinion. I personally would not be mad getting rid of Hackney Yard, period, as a map. I'm not a fan of it on any of the modes. Domination is not as bad, but it's just chaos. It's just
it gets to a point though where like we could say this about every single map in this game, to be completely frank. But we just kind of, I feel like, have to bite the bullet and keep a deeper map pool in, because if you keep trimming away maps that you just don't like,
It's gonna get boring.
or it's gonna get boring. We're gonna get
That's
the same
fair.
maps. There's gonna be
It's gonna be World War II all over again.
Yeah, there's gonna be no way for teams to have any creative like abilities in the vetoes, and there's it makes it way easier also to counter a team when you have way less maps to know what they're doing on.
my biggest thing is like I agree with that. First of all, that if you trim it up too much to just have good maps, then it does become a little stale. But I would still prefer to have a smaller hardpoint map rotation if I never have to see an Arklov hardpoint ever.
So going off, because I can't say anything obviously, but Chicago streams their scrims. So going off what Chicago practices on their stream, I have not seen any Arklov and I've not seen any Dom.
Yeah.
So going off that, I don't think the map pool is that bad because domination. I wish it was just hardpoint and S&D at this point, but domination is in there and we got to live with it. And I don't think Dom's actually bad on Gunrunner, and I think it's kind of entertaining on Hackney because it's such a shit show. Like
It's just
everyone's
chaos.
trying to flip constantly. So
Yeah,
I kind of think it's kind of like entertaining when the match is close. When it gets the blowout, it's not. St. Petrograd.
I just
real quick,
personally,
since you talked about blowout in Dom, can we talk about how there's no time limit or score limit? Like time limit there is, but score limit.
I think I'm hoping it's gonna change. I'm hoping we get contest flags in too, like where it goes neutral.
It's gonna be CTF all over again, where we're watching for 3 minutes of
after the game's already
second
over
half of a Dom, and a team already is at 2:30, and we're just gonna be sitting there like, oh, that's why I loved Control, because I didn't love the game mode specifically, but I loved how quick it could be, because you never had to wait on a clock. There was always a way to end the rounds early.
Sure, and the fact of the matter was there was 3 win conditions, and all of them brought excitement to the fan and the audience. But I agree that there needs to be, as soon as the game becomes mathematically impossible to come back, the game just needs to end. Just period. Because again, like even just just yesterday, the Collegiate Call of Duty League, we had scores upwards of 260 to 110. Like
that happens so often too.
Yeah, and that's 3 minutes of
is,
just game time. That's just like, so the game's over. What can you say about it?
My thought is they either need to put a 200 cap on it, or they need to make it so there's no time running if you're triple capping, so like comebacks could happen.
I said the exact same thing.
So like at the beginning of the year when everyone was kind of close on Dom, I loved it. That's when when I was first on the podcast and I was telling you how Dom like it has. But now when there's a skill gap in Dom, it's like Like, not even, like, our team, like, I watch a lot of Chicago, I watch other teams, it's, like, a lot of scores are, like, 290 to, like, 120, and it's, like
Yeah, it's so hard to watch that. It really
yeah,
is.
it's
Which
brutal.
is even worse to watch in scrims because once it gets out of reach, teams stop trying in their scrim. So
Oh, they just end matches.
yeah,
Yeah, ending
yeah,
match. I've seen that a lot with amateur squads in the challenges. As soon as the game is over,
Yeah.
mathematically this end the game. Fine with that. Totally cool with it. I could
yeah.
I could
I'm
sit there
really
as a
fine with
caster
that.
and explain they ended the match because it's mathematically impossible for them to come back. But I
Well,
mean,
it's like also this is new to us again. Like newer COD fans, mathematically impossible is a new term because
sure,
like all of our game modes have been like clock stoppage wise since Black Ops 3. So
yeah,
we haven't had anything like mathematical like coming down like with time since AW.
yeah,
So
that's a
if
good
you
I do
point.
need
gotta say this, though.
anywhere, go ahead.
We are one map away from having a good map pool, in my
I
opinion.
agree.
So, like, if you have, like, one good other map in Hardpoint, we're set. And if we have one
Yeah.
other good Hardpoint or Dom map, we're golden.
I think
And I
so too.
really hope they take it out of
It's not as
they take a
bad. Yeah.
DLC map and put it in. Like,
Yeah,
I
It's
hope
not
there's
as
a
bad
map in
as
the
as
future
people
here
think.
that, yeah, I hope there's a
Yeah.
map in the future here that is like good enough to where we can throw it in the rotation.
yeah.
Like, is St. Petrograd not good for Dom? Sure. Does it make a lot of people don't think
Well, it would
spawns
be
make
better if
sense?
you just push the B flag from the
Yeah.
lion statue to the apartment complex. That would
Exactly.
already make it a better map by far.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that's the
100%.
other thing is like it might not even need to be the fact that you need to just have another map, but even if you just tune where some of the bomb site locations are, where some of the flag locations are, or how big or small some of the hard
I
point
think that's
locations are.
people's biggest problem is
Yeah.
the locations of some of the objective
Yeah,
points. Because I don't think these maps are. There's some maps that are horribly laid out, but I don't think a lot of these maps are horribly laid out. It's just where they chose to put the like choke points with these
I
agreed.
wouldn't mind
objectives.
vacant Dom. Bring it back to
Vacant
the COD
Dom
4
could be
days.
fun. Vacant
I was
hardpoint
just
is
never
not
a
fun.
vacant
Tell you that
fan, I
much.
guess.
Vacant Hardpoint's not fun.
Not fun.
But Vacant Dom could be a thing. I wouldn't mind that.
Dude, it's just tough because like out of all the franchises or not franchises, but all the companies that make COD like a Infinity Ward or like a Treyarch or something, if there was one that we needed remastered maps in our map pool, like Infinity Ward's the one you would want to probably like stay away from.
Yeah. I think
Just
Treyarch
because
maps are good to
competitive
remaster.
like they have really good history and track record with maps, but not with competitive maps because like you think about it, MW, MW2, MW3, none of them were in the like
I
prime
wish
Call
they
of
would just
Duty
make new
sports.
maps.
Yeah.
I'm so done with the remasters at this
Yeah,
point.
I'm at the same point.
I liked
Um,
Vacant in the history. I don't want it coming back.
Yeah.
I don't know.
let's go backwards a little bit here. Another question. It looks like, again, if you have questions out there in the chat, please feel free to let them fly in Twitch chat right now. Opinions on GAs so far, as far as how things have gone. Are there things that you kind of wish there were maybe more GAs, less GAs?
Well,
I'll
in
say
this
this.
year's oh yeah, go ahead.
So every GA doesn't make sense. It doesn't
Mhm.
make sense to the public, but it makes sense to all the pro
I
players.
agree.
I wish there was a pro player. There's lots of makes content. I wish one of them would go through and go talk GA to GA and list the reasons why it's GA'd, and put that out on like Twitter on the public, so like more casual fans will understand. So it doesn't look like it's just everything bad, everything that players don't like at GA, because that is the case. But everyone votes on stuff nowadays, so everything's there's reasons like silencers. There's reason.
Mhm.
There's reasons why you know like there's a reason why there's only one smoke. There's a reason why there's only like two stuns, two splashes, one smoke. Like
Has it
there's
officially
reasons
gone
behind that.
down to one smoke of the GA list?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I know it was
So
at two
Here
for some
also.
time, but I didn't
Here,
realize
this
it went
is
down to one.
yeah, I don't know if it's public or not, but honestly, it doesn't matter at this point. But like, the reason why there's only one smoke is because it just got a little too chaotic, and they wanted it to be more strategic. And the reason behind the two flash, two stuns is battle hardened doesn't work as well. It's kind of like I think it was last year where like the battle hardened of Black Ops 4, I forget what it was called, didn't
Taskmaster.
work,
Fast
didn't
mask.
it
Yeah.
didn't work correctly all the time. So it's kind of like the same issues now. Yeah,
Here
trying
from
to make it more competitive, work out in the competitive sense.
yeah. For me, especially this year, I would say out of any, it's the most appropriate year for this like size of a GA list. I think it's saving our year at the moment. Like if these GAs weren't in place, I think we'd be in for a way worse of a year.
Oh, could you imagine suppressor lasers
And
on every
then
single
yeah, I
MP5?
know. And then no, and
Yeah.
on top of that though as well, you think about it, it's like there's not really something on the list where you could say is on there for just because like players like one specific player, a few players
That's
don't like it. It's a
such a good point.
universal agreement
Yeah.
on this. feel like
Because it felt like there were a couple of GAs last year that were just put in because,
swordfish.
yeah, the players didn't care for it.
Yeah,
There is a voting process, so it
swordfish.
does go through.
The rampart, like
The
that kind of
Rampart,
stuff.
yeah.
There is like a there. I don't think there's no GAs that like stick out to me that is like terrible. Like I would
It's
love
like
if kill streaks were in, but like
I
what kill
forgot.
streaks would even be in, and like kill streaks are actually really easy to get in this game, so it
Yeah,
would just be
yeah.
That was the big thing.
that would
It was
just be a
that's
huge
why.
issue. It would
Yeah.
not be fun to watch. It's not like old school 4v4 where like kill streaks were like fun to watch. It's like on the level of remember World War II, the fighter jet, and it was just like everyone got a
Oh,
fighter jet,
Everyone got a fighter jet if you kept
and
a
it was
flag.
real boring, and
Get a
it was
kill,
just
cap a flag, you got a fighter
yeah,
jet.
that's how it is now.
Damn.
But I saw someone bring in the specialist perks. That is kind of an issue.
Yeah. Here, real
Because you-
quick for specialist perks, about the actually go ahead, I completely just lost my train of thought.
So specialist perks, when you
God
get
damn.
all 8 kills, you get every
You
single
get every
perk.
single one, right?
So
Yeah,
that is an issue because
A
you
big
you
issue.
get tracker.
that's
Like
horrible.
I was watching Priest run around with tracker the other day. I'm sitting there like, what is this? So that is an issue. But like that, how do you fix that?
Yeah,
'Cause, like,
that's literally a game. That's a game issue. You can't necessarily GA it
Yeah.
because you have to run something, right? Unless you, I mean, because like again, like
Oh yeah, I remember what I was saying.
like having
you
tune up,
physically
having
have to run
double
something.
time, like especially because like I've loved lately watching teams like again I've got dead silence ready to go. I'm gonna equip double time this time so I can get across the map that much faster. Like those choices and those strategic decisions are super healthy, I think, for a competitive scene. So you want to have the ability of using them. But yeah, like you said, if you take that away, I feel like you lose a huge element of the game just to avoid one broken element that happens
Yeah.
at a very special occurrence. I mean, again, getting fully perked out is still pretty rare, but it is
I
an
think it's
issue.
8 kills.
Yeah,
But
it's 8
it's
kills.
kind of hard to get there.
And then live long enough
yeah.
past those 8 kills to make value of it.
Yeah. So
Yo,
it's not that bad.
real
It's not
quick on
game breaking.
like
Yeah.
the last thing I'll say on like the GA stuff is like I think also what just is important to know is like what Austin said earlier is there's like definitive reasonings behind why each item is GA'd in this game. So when like I forgot who it was, but I want to say it was either Haggy or like another AM like in on like the top pass pro teams that like was tweeting out like they like pros want to GA it down to like one smoke now and like was just tweeting
Yeah.
like LOL this is absurd and it's like okay, well, let's hear like we never heard the reasons why. We're just immediately going in and clowning the decision like it's a decision to like benefit some certain teams when like everyone was agreeing with it besides like some AM teams. I
But that's
assume.
also the issue that the fans have, which I can relate to, where they don't
Mhm.
understand why things are getting GA'd,
Yeah, they see
which
so
is
many items.
which is the
they don't
problem.
realize how
Yeah.
game breaking
Yeah.
everything
And
is. when you
especially it
combine
just
all.
yeah, it's one of those things too is just there's a huge disconnect between the casual audience and the competitive audience. You know, when they don't see
Yeah.
things like kill streaks, you don't see the loadouts that they run, and it's too hard for a broadcast team to explain that every
Yeah.
single time. So there definitely is a bridge of disconnect, and you know you can point the fingers at whose problem is that? Is you know should there be a more definitive competitive rule set put out by Infinity Ward or Treyarch when they come out with games? Should there be a esports rule set that the pros maybe decide? There's a lot of considerations when it comes down to that, but I agree that it's difficult. I think to service both the casual and competitive communities when there is that giant gap. That is an unspoken gentleman's agreement that we're not going to use
Mhm.
these things.
Well, in that gap as well, like it's all these like people may not realize like why certain individual items are like GA'd like on from our point of view. And then like for us, it's like all these things together and combined being used is what's making it an
Oh,
issue. Like there
absolutely,
may
yeah.
be individual items that may not see overpowered in like pubs or something that you're using, but when you stack it on this class with these attachments and then as well put a couple more like use a couple different things that are G8 or something, it becomes like game breaking in a
Yeah.
sense. It's like specialist is what I
Like a
compare it
good
to.
example is the MP5 with a laser, any
Yeah.
laser, the Merc foregrip, and like the 10mm rounds
I
got a
call it the
little bit
Tempest.
too out of hand to
Yeah.
I call it a Tempest
with
because
the
it's really a hit part.
yeah. But I did see someone in the chat put, why don't you guys just use uh cruise missiles only, because you're in a cruise missile for what 10-15 seconds,
Yeah.
and it's a single kill only.
Usually a single kill. Yeah.
If that,
So
if that.
yeah. So if you're thinking about a hard point, as soon as you spawn up, you have a roll you have to do right away. If you're taking 15 to 20 seconds to call on a cruise missile to get a single kill. You are wasting your life, and you are wasting 20 seconds. You are not doing your role. It's
Out of
yeah,
position.
it's not worth it to just run a cruise
Yeah.
missile.
Good point.
Yeah, yeah,
And even still, like, just like, again, imagine a world where, as an audience member, the only kill streak you'll ever see is cruise missile. Like, even if it were
Yeah, it's a
valuable.
little
Plus,
weird.
personally, I would much rather, like, if we're just throwing out a GA list and we're putting in streaks and all that, I would personally use the specialist kill streaks over the regular streaks anyways.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So,
Having
that's
things
why
like
I just
tune-up
there's
is massive.
yeah.
Having
So
things
not
like
only is it
double
like
time is
streaks are
massive.
just not they're not useful. Like there's no point in them.
it also
Unless
goes back to the perk where like perk 1, 2, and 3 aren't properly balanced. So you have
Oh, as
like a
far
bunch
as
of
like
good
what
perks.
options you have
Yeah.
available to
Here,
you.
so
Yeah.
that dude in chat said, I disagree, and Anchor can use it to flip spawns, then play his life to get in a position. It's yeah, but you're also not in your character, like you're not running around and like making sure that you're the only one anchoring those spawns for
Yeah,
15
usually
seconds.
it's like
It's
2
like what if
people
someone
too
had what if
nowadays.
some I forgot the perk name. What if someone has the perk that where you're blind by that stuff from above and stuff like
Cold-blooded. Yeah.
yeah,
Cold-blooded.
cold-blooded.
Yeah.
Stuff like that, and like or in a building or something, you know, in the back of the spawn. It's like it's a much more preferable thing to have your gun up ready than just be in a corner with something hovering
and
over
a
the
lot of
air
like
for a potential.
yeah, and a lot of the hardpoint maps anyways, it's indoors. Like St. Petrograd, that would be useless. Ramaza,
Ramaza.
useless.
Hackney is still very much so indoors.
Yeah. Hackney useless because first off, you don't anchor in that. It's more of like a team thing. Gunrunner, useless. What are you gonna?
Yeah.
There's no outdoor holds that you usually do. The only thing I could say is maybe hill 3 or 4. You could use it inside of the hill, but again, that goes down to the fact that you're in it for 15 seconds for one single kill.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
not worth it.
like in previous CODs with streaks, like you could use a streak on every map
It's
on
really
some
quick.
like yeah, really quick, or even if the map wasn't great for streaks, there was always like a hill or two where like it opened
Yeah.
up for you to
Oh
like
yeah, I mean, you think
bombard
about
the bridge.
Gridlock last year, right?
Like
It
or
mostly
like
covered.
IW
Exactly.
retaliation, like
Yeah,
everyone
yeah.
bombarded that bridge and stuff
So
because
like
everything
the
else
lightning
was like
strike
bad
was really
for
good
rotating. Yeah,
because you
it
could
was just instantly click,
lay it
click, click,
down
and it's done.
and communicate to your team and then coordinate the hit together off the
Mhm.
lightning strike. That made a
Wasn't
lot
great
of
when it
sense.
wasn't great when it killed your teammates when you placed it like way far away, but you
Right,
know what I mean,
right.
yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I just think it's way more beneficial to
I
have
agree with
streaks
you on
out.
that one, 100%. It's interesting. There's a lot of things that go into the like breeding a successful competitive environment. You've got the game itself. You've got things like the format, the schedule. You've also got things like who's going to be the up and comers coming through. Hopefully, we tackled a lot of those conversation points for you guys today. This was definitely one of our longer episodes. Granted that there was also that period of time that Discord decided to wanted to be a butthole for a moment. But we're gonna wrap things up here. We've got some college football to watch, boys. That's the more important thing coming through here with the national championship. Who do you guys got winning? I've got LSU.
LSU.
Clemson's up 7-0 right now, but
Okay,
I got LSU.
spoiler alerts. I haven't even looked, but you still have.
I want
Are you
Clemson to
saying
win.
that you saying Clemson's gonna win then, Nick? Is that what you're saying?
No,
Okay,
I
yeah,
said
that's what I thought.
Clemson's up 7-0 right now, but I still got LSU.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So all three of us got LSU. Hopefully that'll come true for us. Even though apparently, Easy Mac, you want Clemson to win. Is that what you're saying?
I want Clemson to win. Like my heart wants it, but
Yeah, he's a
LSU's
Clemson
is
fan.
too good this year. Joe
Yeah, I
Burrow is
totally agree.
disgusting.
All right. Well,
Joe
we'll see what
Burrow's
happens.
3-0.
Yeah, he's nuts, dude.
Right.
He's a nuts guy. But we'll end things here for episode number 6. Hopefully, we'll catch you guys back for episode number 7 again. If you were just tuning in on Twitch, you've got iTunes, Google Play, and Spotify, where this episode will also be up for you guys, as well as on the YouTube VOD section. Thanks so much for Nick, as well, Austin Easy Back, for joining me this evening on Off the Rip. We'll catch you guys next Monday for episode number 7. Till then, hope you guys all keep holding it down. So long.